I'll be right back.
And Jim is gone as soon as we hit record.
And bye.
I'm still here.
Oh, jeez, man.
Oh,
Eye roll.
Funfetti is overrated.
Get the out of here, Jim.
from a guy who likes British armor. Thanks, man.
Thank you so much. And over to you, Scott.
Actually, Grant.
That's embarrassing. What are you, 90? I can't drive in the rain?
Did I just say anything about driving? I said it's hard to take pictures of tanks in the rain.
All right, let's pop over into the Plastic Posse podcast. Mock SF. I said mock.
Mock K.
Okay, let me try this one again. Thanks, JB. Oh, shit.
Sorry.
All right. Well, if you wow.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to episode 65 of the Plastic Posse podcast. We have a full episode crammed with a lot of great info around the hobby that we know and love, scale modeling. Tonight, I'm joined with four of my lovely co-hosts and a special guest all the way from the West Coast. So we have Scott Gentry from Utah. How are you doing tonight, Scott?
Doing pretty good. It's good to see all you guys and talk some models.
Sweet. A friendly face in his neighborhood is Doug. How are you tonight?
I am well. Thank you very much.
The Snake Master himself, some say. We also have Grant Mayberry from California. Are you staying dry out there?
yeah, we're doing pretty good. Little snow in the neighborhood this week, but a little crazy. But we're doing great.
Nice. And then lastly, but not least, from the Posse crew, we have TJ near our nation's capital. How are you doing tonight, TJ?
Oh, not too bad.
Absolutely fantastic. And we have a special guest tonight, all the way from Seattle, Washington, our brother from another mother, Jim Bates.
How you guys doing?
So much better now that you're here.
Yeah, well, hey, it's always good to be Jim Bates in the Jim Bates chair.
Oh, man. I hope it's a love seat so I can fit. So we're just going to kick this off with a round the room discussion around what's going on everybody's bench. And I'll go in opposite order and start with our special guest, Jim. And, you know, Jim, you've had a quite exciting time lately with the big show. So if you're not working on anything, we totally understand. But what's going on in your neck of the woods?
I am slowly getting back to modeling. The show almost killed me and I needed a few weeks off, but I'm working on a Rubicon 135th Centurion because British tanks are the best.
Awesome. How do you like the little guy?
It's really nice. I really like it. It's going together well. It's kind of a funky scale, but who cares? It's a Centurion. And
what are they, 156th?
I think they're 156, yeah.
Okay.
I wish they were 148th. I wish we had a Centurion in 148th, but it will do till then. It's a really nice kit and it's well done and it's pretty straightforward to build, which is what I need. You know, it's like I need Lego models for me.
Oh man, I'm with you. I have a couple. They're gorgeous, and Grant does too. All right, moving on. TJ, what's going on in your neck of the woods? I know you've been very busy on a certain project.
I've been busy on a lot of projects actually. I think since the last time we recorded this, I finished the Goblin, mounted it to a base. It's pretty cool. The base is simple. It's just a piece of artboard that I painted satin black and pinned the feet to. So it's really top heavy. So it wants to fall over. So yeah, I have that. What else? Oh, goodness. I made a lot of progress on the Nutcracker. I don't think I talked about the last time. I'm kind of in a haze. I'm not really sure what I talked about last time. And I should, because I just listened to our episode the other day when it released. Got some paint on that. I went to a show and bought some stuff, and I had some leftover cash on my way down to North Carolina earlier this week. I bought the Tamiya's Comet. I stopped at a hobby town in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and they had the Comet there for like $40. And I was like, yeah, I might as well. So I've been slamming that together quite literally because I need to build one more run of tracks. I might do that after we're done with this, and it's ready for paint. I'm not using any aftermarket. It's my basic kit build for IPMS Nats this year. So that's no aftermarket, nothing. And the kit has no photo etch or anything. It's just straight plastic, and it's gorgeous. I'm not the biggest fan of the subject. The comments are cool. I mean, I don't dislike them, but it's not something that grabs me. But I think I said this before we recorded, it's probably the best armor kit I've ever built. It's that good. It's Tamiya, so that's to be expected, but it's, oh God, it's so good. Yeah, so I got that going. And then I started to throw together a Machine Krieger Conrad, which is a straw suit, and it's got the bubble top of a Hughes MD-500 helicopter. It's what they were modeled after or used to donated to build the original ones. So you can see the pilot in there, and I have a cool resin pilot bust from Brickworks that I painted, and he's now secured in there. And I was working on that earlier today too. I got to start texturing it and add some details, and then hopefully I can get that in paint this weekend too before I go back to North Carolina.
Nice. And I think you might have forgotten something. You're also have another initiative going off the bench, but still hobby related.
Oh, right. So when I was at the Old Dominion Open last weekend, I had lunch with Jeff Feller, who is a amps master and amazing modeler, primarily does dioramas, and our friend Jackson was there too. And while we were at lunch, we were with my friend Eric and some of his friends. When we were at lunch, we were kind of kicking around the idea of starting an amps chapter, which is something Jackson and I have talked about maybe a year ago. And we said we would look into it, and then we just kind of shelved it. But we got talking to Jeff, who lives in the Northern Virginia area. And he's like, yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. So we get back to the show. We finally catch up with Patrick Brown, who's another very, very good modeler. His name got called quite a few times in the awards too for the show. And we were chatting with him, and I think he also mentioned it separate from us. Somehow the four of us started talking about it, and we were standing at the show, and I was like, you know what, let's just do it. Let's do it. So we did. I emailed Ed Ingersoll, who's the second VP of the South region, which is Virginia's end. And I asked him, how do you go about making an amps chapter? He told me it's super easy. For anyone that wants to do it, reach out to your second VP of your region. They'll tell you how to do it. Scott knows it's super easy. Doesn't take much. So we have that now. I actually just sent him all of the information right before I got on this. So hopefully he'll have that published within the next couple of days on the AMPS website to make us an official chapter. We have 10 members already, and we are called Novamps.
That's really cool, man. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We're going to meet at the Gum Springs Library in South Riding, Virginia. Yeah, it's super easy to get a room from the library. It's free.
Oh, that's awesome.
The libraries in Loudoun County are really nice, and Gum Springs Library is maybe 5-6 years old. It's not old. It's a really nice library. There are other AMPS chapters in Virginia. There's the Fredericksburg AMPS, which Frank Blanton is a member of. Super nice guy. He's been very supportive of starting a new chapter. And then there's the Washington Armor Club, which is it's an AMPS chapter, but it existed before AMPS. They meet further towards DC in the immediate suburbs, and then sometimes in Maryland. So this chapter is for those of us that can't, or it's inconvenient for us to travel either down south to Fredericksburg, because they meet on a Friday night. And if you live in the Northern Virginia area, you're not driving to Fredericksburg on a Friday afternoon and expecting to get there at any time soon, because it's some of the worst traffic in the country. Same thing. I live about an hour from DC. The Washington Armor Club meets right outside of DC, not too far, but it's further than I would like to drive on a Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning, really. So we put together this club to kind of collect the members in the Northern Virginia area, potentially even the Eastern West Virginia, which I live right next to. I think I mentioned that before. West Virginia, I can almost see it. I actually can see it from my house. I can see the mountains. Yeah, and maybe the Northern Virginia region that doesn't want to go down to Fredericksburg or can't, because it's hard for us to do that. So yeah, we're hoping to really grow the chapter. Jeff is not only is he an amazing modeler, he's also does design work for a living. So he's already designed us a couple of logos. We started a Facebook page today, and we will start a Facebook group as well, because, might as well. So yeah, so look for us there. On Facebook, we are Northern Virginia AMPS, because Facebook wouldn't let me make the page called Novamps. Just look for us there. And if you follow me or whatever, I'll be sharing it and growing it. And the best part is we're already kicking around the idea for our AMPS display at the Tank Farm open house this summer. Jackson's pretty sure he can pull some strings that we can have our display in one of the open top vehicles that they have, which would be awesome. I've mentioned the tank farm before. They do the open house. The tanks drive around. You can look at everything. Some of them they open up and you can get in. So hopefully he's going to try to see what he can do about having our table literally in a tank, which would be pretty rad.
Man, there's nothing cooler than that.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Patrick Brown that TJ was talking about, he's a member of Great Basin Amps, which is the amps chapter that we started here in Utah. So Patrick's going to be a member of both TJ and the club that I'm in as well. So that's pretty cool. He's a great modeler, great guy.
Yep. So he used to be in your area and he moved out to my area. So super nice guy. We've chatted online before. I'm 3D printing some stuff for him. He had someone design the interior of a Type 96, some Japanese tank, whatever the 16 scale one that Tacom makes. He had someone,
Type 94,
or 94, same thing. Whatever. I was too off.
Same thing, yeah.
I think it's for that kit. He had someone design the interior for him, and he shot over to me, and I'm printing it for him. So I will eventually owe him a whole pile of prints. So super nice guy, one of the friendliest guys ever, and looking forward to getting our chapter off the ground. It's pretty cool because I'm kind of, I guess, the lead guy, the contact. So I guess I'll have to run an amps chapter at some point.
Nice. Yeah, Pat's a great guy. He gave me killer deals on a few kits he was trying to burn. And like the BT7 from Tamiya, I think it was like $20 or something. And then I get it, and there's like a full Edwards set. I'm like, good Lord, man. And then I got the 48 scale Shoker. So that's great that you could link up with him. Super nice guy. He's been a long time supporter of the pod, and really happy to see him around in another aspect of, supporting our team.
Yeah, it was to kind of go on. I'm really excited about this. So I'm sorry I keep going.
Keep going.
It's kind of cool how it all just came together because Jeff is an amps master, right? And he met Jackson at Amps Nats last year. Jeff's a super nice guy. I think shortly after that, because he's in our group, he's in the Posse Facebook group. He messaged me, and he friended me on Facebook, and he messaged me. He's like, "Hey, I'm in the Northern Virginia area, and I see we have a couple mutual friends. How do you know Jason and Jackie?" And I was like, "Oh, it's funny you said that. Jason is my cousin. I've known him my entire life. We're the same age." He's like, "Wow, that's crazy. Like, I know both of them really well. I've been friends with them for like 15 years. I'm like, wow, it's a small world." And we hit it off, and everything's great. And he told me a funny story because Jackie is my cousin's wife, who's super nice lady. They used to work together, and he was getting ready to go to, I think, and it was either an IPMS Nats or an Amps Nats, and he was telling her that he was going out of town for the weekend. She asked him, "Where are you going?" He's like, "Oh, well, it's a model convention. I build models." And she's like, "Oh, someone in my family builds models." And he said, I'm thinking like, oh, it's probably like, her little nephew or whatever. And she's like, "Oh, here, I'll show you." And she pulls up Facebook, and she's like showing me all these pictures. And I'm looking, I'm like, wow, these are like, it's pretty good. It's like an actual modeler. And then he met me, and he's like, "Yeah, so she showed me your models when she said one of my family members builds models." I was like, "That's crazy." He's like, "Yeah, this was like 5-6 years ago. This wasn't just like the other day." I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." Just funny.
Small world. That's awesome. And I think it's really great that you've created a chapter, and really shows there's still room for that, throughout the country. And I'd encourage any listener, post on our group page. I think you posted some inquisitive stuff on there around, starting a chapter, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people in the same boat as you. And I love it. And I think it's great that the societies are growing, and AMPS is a great organization, always been a great organization since the days of Cookie Sewell and having it established. And, we reminisced about it with Jeremy Moore just a couple episodes ago. So that's really great, and look forward to maybe going to one of your shows someday.
Yeah, I'm not making it a secret that the, I guess, end game of having an AMPS chapter for this region is to host an AMPS show in the DC metro area. That is, I know it's a lot of work. Scott, you've been involved. I know it's a ton of work, and I don't have all the free time that I would like. However, an AMPS show for this region would be awesome. So hopefully within a couple of years, I can make that happen.
Yeah, anything that we can do to help you, of course. And then, the AMPS leadership on the national level, as well as I'm sure in your region, they're just great guys. I mean, Neil Stokes and, those guys, they're good people to work with. That's been our experience. So,
Jim, did you have a question? Your hand is up.
Yes, my hand is up. I don't want to steal.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to steal TJ's thunder, but Eric Brubaker, who is a local modeler and friend of the pod, is looking to start an AMPS chapter out here in the Seattle, Tacoma, Pacific Northwest area as well. So we may have another chapter getting off the ground here shortly, and maybe I'll have him post in the Posse group or something to see if there's any other Pacific Northwest modelers who want to participate.
I can think of one off the top of my head.
Well, besides me.
Rick Lawler.
Yeah, Rick Lawler. There we go.
If you start an AMPS chapter, you need one dues paying member of AMPS.
Wow.
That's it.
That's extremely low threshold.
Yeah, I thought it would be like 5 or a couple.
Yeah, I thought it was 5, but yeah, one is great.
According to Ed Ingersoll, it is one dues paying member, and in response to my email, it goes, well, that's you. So there you go.
Well done, TJ.
Yes. And nice. To be much like your local IPMS chapters, generally, to be a member of an AMPS chapter, you do not have to be an actual member of AMPS. Membership, of course, is encouraged. And we will not push, but we will point people in that direction when they join our club, but you don't have to if you don't want to. And yeah, I mean, our motto is build tanks, have fun. So that's the whole core of who we are. So
the ethos.
Yes.
I love it. Well, great update. I think that's really exciting. And maybe we could check back in a few months or, a few episodes that is, and have a few members of your team on, maybe Jackson and the others that started Pat, and really have around the table around just how the club's going. And, I think it'd be great. So cool. Moving on. Grant, how are you? What's on the bench?
Doing good. I finished up a couple things for the Seattle show that were on the table. A figure, a vampire figure with a base on the back, and working on a 75 millimeter Roman Senator right now. Got the skin tone pretty much done last night. Got to start the hair this weekend, and then try and figure out how to paint white and look like white, but not look completely, white. So that'll be interesting. Other than that, it's getting ready for the 48 and 48 build. That's going to be a blast. Scott's got the M8. He's going to build for that, I think. And then, but I'm going to cheat a little bit this year. I'm with Star Wars Legion. It's 147th. I'm sorry. I'll put some putty on top, make it 148th. So we're still okay.
That's good.
Yeah. So I'm going to do, like I said, Legion Star Wars, because everybody had fun who did them last year. So I'm kind of looking to jump on that. That's what I'm looking forward to. So that's it.
Grant, your Roman dude is looking really good.
Oh, I appreciate that, TJ. I really do. Yeah, that's all those oil paint, not oil paint, but that stuff you pointed me to, the acrylic paints that come in like the oil.
The scale 75.
Oh God, they're so smooth. They are so smooth when they lay down.
I have a question about it though.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Do you find something funny about the name Biggest?
I didn't even think about that at first, and then I think it was Doug. It was Doug put the old little picture in there, and then Steve Baker was hilarious. Is this Paintus Acrylius or something like that? It was there. It just went on and on and I loved it. And TJ, you're right. I couldn't get that out of my head all day today because everybody kept saying it. That was funny.
Yeah, Doug beat me to the punch because I saw it, that's all I could think of was the life of Brian.
Yep.
And then Doug already got it. I was like, damn it, Doug, you beat me.
Doug is no joke. Doug is quick on those. He's really, really quick. You gotta watch.
He was quick on the uptake.
Yeah, he is.
He has a wife,
Oh, that's hilarious.
Grant, one other thing I wanted to call out, you attended a show in Ventura. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was last Sunday, actually. It's a small show, very small show around here. It's called Model Fest. It's in Ventura, California. It was right after all the storms, so it wasn't that many people, but there's a couple hundred models on the table. It was really good. I got to hang out with some of the Posse guys were there. JC was there. Hey, JC. Really appreciate your help there and great time. Sorry, I lost my voice halfway through the show, but it was great. I got to hang out with some really, really good local modelers that I've known for a long time. Danny Glover, who's a fantastic aircraft modeler. He's in that that group of guys that's been building aircraft here for forever. Did a P-38, which was really, really nice. He did a Zero, but he had an F-14 there. That was it was very, very beautifully done. Took first, of course. It's a very beautiful aircraft. Mike Armstrong, who some of you guys met in Vegas last year, was there. He had a Stug there, snorkel Stug with the big round short barrel on it. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful kits. Saw some of the local guys, saw some of the models that we've seen for a little bit, so it was it's usually a kickoff show for the year. It's kind of everybody goes down for just to see each other again after the holidays, which was fun. Nice to see the local guys again. Great vendor room. It was, they had some really good deals. A lot of the small vendors were there. This is kind of an interesting show because a lot of the vendors there are guys that are just trying to clean stuff out their closets. So you get some really, really good prices. I got a Merit, the huge tank transport Merit one, the old one, for $50. And I also got a Machining Krieger Cow art book, which is like a $90 to $100 book, and I got it for $20. But it was a great show. I had a good time.
Awesome. That's great that you got to hit 2 shows in 2 weeks. I'm a little jelly. I'm not gonna lie. So moving back west, or no, we're going east, but staying west. Kick it over to Doug. How's it going, Snake Wrangler?
It's going well. I'm kind of throwing myself in all kinds of different directions. When it comes to modeling, I've actually put a little bit of work into my Mach-E build, my Machining Krieger Groberhund. I've got the legs about ready, fiddling with seams and stuff. There's a lot on those legs, so a lot of texturing to take care of that. But I've been playing with bases. I've been making backgrounds for reptile enclosures using the techniques I learned building stuff for my models. I'm doing it for a friend, but then this friend of mine, we'll call him Grant, sent a book home with Scott after the Seattle show to give to me. It's actually in 2 parts. It's Roman LaPlatte's miniature art #1. It's insanely good. It's like 117 pages. Step by step, how to do the stuff he does. And so I've got my work cut out for me just to start like reading that. I mean, there's not so much print, but a lot of pictures. It's incredible. I'm super stoked to get going on that. Even my wife was thumbing through it. She kept saying, wow, as she was going through that book. So that's going on. And I have a little project of my own. I mean, I can't live up to TJ's project, but I'm starting my own little, I'm gonna tie all my passions together. I'm going to have a Facebook and Instagram going with my reptiles and models. And anytime I can tie them together, I'm going to do it. I think I did this mostly because it was something that I know Jim and Grant really, really wanted because they love the reptiles so much. I've already started it. I'll probably be sharing something one of these days soon. Scales in scale is what I'm calling it. So just going to play around, see what I can do with it just for kicks.
Nice. That's awesome. And you're gearing up for the 48 and 48 as well?
Oh, yeah. I'll be doing the Bandai AT-ST. I've built a couple of them in the past. And on the last 3 48-hour builds I did 2 pieces of armor and 1 airplane. So I need to go back to my roots for this one and just I'm going to spend most of my time probably painting now.
Awesome. That's a gorgeous little kit and can't wait to see what you're doing with it. I'm assuming that the compressor will probably be on, and as soon as the clock rings,
that's right.
You're going to slide over to that spray booth and start blasting paint.
He'll be spraying that interior. Yeah.
That's how I do my airplanes. I paint the interior parts first. I probably won't pay too much attention to the interior on the AT-ST since it won't be lit. It's hard to see in there anyway.
Doug came over last night to bring me this M8, which is what I'm going to do for mine. But I got to see his Matilda finally in person that he did for the scale models for veterans 48-hour group build. And man, it looks great in person. I think Doug's kind of become our resident armor builder here. He's doing a lot of projects.
Hardly.
All right, we're going to turn right down the road and go to Scotty Too Hottie. So how's it going on your bench?
What was that, man? I got to take a little bit of a break. It's been hectic. Everybody knows that we're getting ready for the big weekend build, which, is after when this episode drops, that'll be kind of in the rearview mirror, but had a break this week for a little bit. So picked all my road wheels from my 3D prints on my 1/16 scale Panzer I, and I've been building the metal tracks for that. So made a little bit of progress. That was nice. And also been doing some cool 3D prints. A buddy of mine in Canada, his name's Alain Rivard. He does amazing STL files for science fiction fans. And he just came out with what I think is the definitive Colonial Viper Mark I, which is, my subject. He came out with an STL file that is just going to print into the best replica of the Viper you can get. And so obviously I purchased that and really, really excited about that. The fuselage is on the printer right now. And so it's been fun to do that. And then looking forward to next weekend, 48 hours of hanging out with the Posse and other people from around the world, building models for a great cause. I know we're all excited about that. And hopefully everybody enjoyed the interview that we did in the last episode. That was a lot of fun. And JB, before I turn it back to you, I just wanted to take a moment and just thank the Posse's partners for stepping up for that. I'm sure that the Posse will as well, but Tamiya USA, Tankcraft, Rick Lawler, AK, just everybody stepped up and donated things for the auctions for that group build, and it's such a great cause. So just wanted to thank all of our Posse partners for really stepping up like they have in the past and just really supporting a great cause.
Yeah, definitely. They surely make the event really, really nice by offering a lot of great products and just support and getting the word out there to support an excellent charity. So we are super thankful for them. Yeah, and I'll just take us home on the round the table. So it's been a pretty busy last 2-3 weeks. A lot of projects on and off the bench, in all honesty. So first I'll just start with what's on the bench. Had the opportunity to finish off the L70. It's gotten to a state where it's done enough, and I'm cool with that. I do need to finish the figure still, and then I'll give a full spread over to Tamiya to share. And it's been a lovely kit. And again, special thanks to Tamiya USA for providing that early sample. That's a production kit. It's absolutely gorgeous. Should be out in the April timeframe and around $50 retail. You can't beat it. So highly recommended. Encourage everyone to go out and get one if you're a Panzer nut. I'd also like to shout out our Patreon supporters. They've been really great, and I was able to share the complete step-by-step from literally clipping the first pieces to finishing off the build with weathering online. So there's over 70 pictures that I've posted and then accompanying text to kind of walk you through the build.
Yeah, JB, I think the Patreon feedback, the sentiment seems to be that, if you continue to work hard, that someday you'll really master those tritone paint jobs and you'll do a really good one, but keep on the path you're on, keep going, because I really think you're getting close.
Thanks, Scott. It's for tritonal. I guess I'm just getting worn out being mediocre. So I turned my attention to natural metal, and now I'm focused on a P51, which is for the Musaru Cup. I don't think I'll be the last one to finish, so I'm super stoked about that. And it's been a great ride. It's a lovely little kit. I know some of us have already built the armor kits, TJ with his Yak, and I know Scott has a few in his stash, and I think Grant does too. And of course, Jim Bates as well. That's his scale, the chosen scale of 1/72nd. And
the divine scale.
The divine scale. Yes. No. So I'll going back to it, it's natural metal. Really the first time I used the LP line, they're absolutely gorgeous. LP11 is their silver. Oh, it sprays so nice, equivalent to AS12 for those aircraft modelers. And I thinned it with Mr. Leveling Thinner, and it goes on gorgeous. And I primed in the Mr. Surfacer black. So that was really easy. Again, super easy, and it dries super fast. I was able to mask off the invasion stripes and the OD panel on the top. That's anti-glare for the pilot. Just overall really nice kit. I spent more masking time than building it. I think I spent 2 nights masking, probably total of over 8 or 9 hours. And then I got the decals on 2 days ago, but I had issues with the star on the top of the wing. For some reason, the decal wrinkled, and I was using Mr. Mark Fitzstrong, actually, from Tamiya, and it was okay. It worked on everything great, but that top star did not lay right. It had like these micro wrinkles. So I contacted my aircraft consigliere, Steve Baker, and we walked through some steps to reconcile that issue. And I ended up taking, this is going to sound crazy, I took the clear packing tape. So I used masking tape to try to strip it off, no dice. So I went down and got clear packing tape, and I laid it on top, and I literally rubbed it into the surface, and then I ripped it off. And by doing that 3 or 4 times, I was able to extract the decal, only minor demarcations to the paint. So I polished that down and then came back with another coat of flat aluminum and then clear coat on top, put the decal on today with Microsol, Microset, and it looks absolutely fantastic. So I will likely clear coat it tonight, start weathering over the weekend, and be done very soon, because that takes me into the next thing I want to mention is I received Andy's brand new 1/16 scale Tiger. It's massive. Actually, Duncan, our dog, was looking at making it his new home, but the cat beat him up. So it's not his, it's actually the cat's. So it's a gorgeous kit. I recommend anyone out there for $150, you're not going to find a better value for an armor kit. It is a box that is bigger than the Sherman box, which was bigger than the Stug box. So it's probably around 7 to 8 pounds of pure plastic. It is an absolute unit. Steve Baker has one and he's going to build it soon. He already signed up for that and I'm going to hold him to it, but it's a gorgeous kit. I've started cleaning up road wheels. I will work on it as fast as I can. And I have a goal of actually having it built by the time we go to commies, to at least have it on the plastic Posse table to show off. And it is really, really nice. I cannot wait to go more. And, before I kick it over to our main discussion topic, I do want to give a couple special shout outs and special thanks. So Jeremy Moore, he heard our episode and he sent me over the new M8 from Tamiya. So I have that as well for the 48-hour build. And then he also sent over the Panda models 3D printed accessories for the Comet. So super excited to use that on it. Obviously my airplane consigliere, Steve Baker, and then also John Everett. He stopped over my house. He lives in the neighborhood over and he brought Penelope with him. And a lot of you will see Penelope at the Commies Fest, and it is a 1-to-1 scale Epithosaurus. It's absolutely fantastic. I think he spent 10 to 11 hours airbrushing it. It belongs in a museum. Absolutely gorgeous model. It was on the table. I think my cat got freaked out and we didn't see her for the rest of the night. And Duncan said, "Nope, I'm done," and walked away. So we had Vietnamese food, and then he introduced me to a new YouTube channel that I'd love to plug. It's Smuggler's Room. It's a gentleman actually not too far away in a neighborhood over here in Denver, has around 50,000 subscribers. And his whole thing is Star Wars modeling, and specifically Star Wars modeling for his house. So you think of Galaxy's Edge in Disney World, Disneyland, he's recreating that type of feel in his house. And he also has scale modeling on there as well, which is really cool. And he kind of does a hybrid where he takes toys, so the Hasbro style action figure stuff, and makes dioramas out of it, weathers it. Super nice guy. He does a lot of his work with a laser cutter and highly recommended. So the Smuggler's Room, maybe we're going to even have him on one time, because his channel is super interesting, super nice guy. And for everyone that's a Star Wars geek out there, definitely go check it out.
Awesome. I'm going to check it out for sure.
Outstanding. The last thing I'll mention is the IPMS National. So registration is live. It went live on March 1st. It's been an adventure. I'm the seminar chair there, and we are filling out the schedule left and right. Also, we have paid workshops, some of which have already sold out. So there's the Grex airbrushing seminar. There's the Andrea Miniatures painting figures workshop. That sold out as well. They had one of those classes, but I'm most proud of is Rick Lawler's workshop, which is focused on groundwork for dioramas and vignettes. He initially offered 2 courses. Both have sold out within literally hours of it opening. And he was kind enough to extend an offer to do another session on Saturday. So the Saturday session is available right now. It's limited to 10 seats, and we can't wait for it. Now, what's special, though, is we, the Plastic Posse, have bought a seat at the table on Friday, and we are going to give it away to our supporters. So if you are a Patreon member and you are going to the IPMS Nationals, we're going to draw a name out of the hat, and you could be the lucky winner to be at the Friday session with some of us. We actually have our host team here. I think we're spread across both days, Thursday and Friday. I think Doug and Grant will be in the Thursday session. Myself, Scott, and TJ and Jensen will be in Fridays. And then we also have a seat in the Friday session for a lucky listener. So if you're a Patreon supporter, we're probably going to do a drawing in the April-May timeframe. And the only requirement is obviously a Patreon supporter, but we would love it if you are actually attending the IPMS Nationals. If you can't attend, no worries. If there's a last minute cancellation, no worries. We're going to pull another name out of the hat, and that person will go in your place. But the only requirement is Patreon supporter, and then you're going to the show. So we look forward to having someone join us. We don't know who it is, but it's going to be exciting. And with that, that ends the roundtable.
The Triple P is sponsored by Tankcraft, makers of highly realistic aftermarket 3D printed tank tracks in 1/35th scale. Tankcraft Pro Tracks, as real as it gets. These are not just copies of previously produced model kit parts. These designs are based on real 1-to-1 scale tank track links that Tankcraft has measured and photographed. These designs are then downsized to 1/35th scale, printed and test fitted on all the major 1/35th scale armor kits. Having used these tracks, we can honestly say that these are high quality, super detailed, easy to assemble, with fine layer lines that are practically invisible to the naked eye. Cleanup is minimal and usually not even needed. So go on over to tankcraft.com right now, that's TANKRAFT.com, and get yourself a set of Pro Tracks. While you're there, check out their other cool scale modeling stuff. Your bench will thank you. As a reminder, Posse fans can take 15% off their first order using the code POSSE15 at checkout. That's POSSE 15.
I've done a lot of talking, but I'm going to introduce our next discussion point, our first one for the night. And I think it goes along the lines of what we've just talked about in a sense, but maybe take it a next step deeper. And I will pass it off to someone to start. But the subject is that excitement of a new kit. How do you feel when getting something brand new, a new kit, a new accessory? What does it do for your motivation? What does it do for your vision? What's it do for your, mental health? And that's a subject I'd love to talk about because Andy's Tiger just showed up and I feel friggin' awesome having it. And with this, I'm going to kick it over to my main man, Scott, to start us.
Yeah, I think when I saw that kid had arrived with Dunk and the picture you sent there with Dunk, and I was like, oh man, know what John's going to be doing today. It's kind of like, focus, John, focus. You've got to have that Mustang done, right? But, I've actually gotten to where I don't buy nearly as many kits as I used to. I'm kind of a little more apt to pick up a new tool or some paint or something like that. But, those things don't bring the excitement like what you're talking about. When we were up in Seattle, I picked up that ICM 1/32nd scale Yak 9. I've wanted a 32nd scale Yak 9 for quite a while. And then Doug brought me the Tamiya 1/48 scale M8, and you're right. It's just something about a new kit. I think it opens that door for that project. You start, it goes from kind of, I heard this kit is going out to, okay, what's the base going to look like? And what's my paint scheme going to be? And, it sort of becomes, I think, a little more tangible. And then, you actually get to see how the parts, fit together. And in the case of, the Big Tiger from Andy or these Tamiya kits, you get to take a look at that and go, oh man, look at how good these go together. So yeah, John, I think, you can call it shiny object syndrome, but I think there's definitely something to be said for a kit versus, just about anything else.
Yeah, Scott, and I'll even be honest, we can open it up even a little bit more. You mentioned products, you mentioned books. I think those are exciting things too. There's been a time where I've bought a single bottle of paint and I'm like, I am so excited right now to go try this. And
that's right. Me and this Russian cockpit turquoise green, we're going to conquer the world together.
That color gets the people going.
It does. It really does.
With this, I think that color is a perfect introduction to our next input from TJ. What are your thoughts behind this? I know you just got that comment.
Oh, just to touch on Russian cockpit turquoise. Yeah, everyone loves that color. I've done 2 machining creator kits and used that as the cockpit color, and every time everyone's like, man, that's a really cool color. Yes, it is. I don't know what it is about it, and it goes well with red because they're contrasting colors, right? I think that's how it works. Anyone that knows me knows and has seen my model kit list. I track every model kit I own, except for figures. For whatever reason, I don't have that on that list, which I might change because that stash is getting large too. And on the very right hand side of my model kit list, I have a column that says started. And if it's started, I have a drop down, and if you choose yes, it turns it yellow. So I can look at my list and just without even reading, I can see what I have started. It's a lot. I love starting kits. I like building, honestly. I think I mentioned before, I'll go in phases, right? Where I'm like, I am in a building mood. I just need to build. I got this Tamiya comment. I was like, I got to build this. So I did. I think the week before I got the new SAFS A8R8 from Japan. I got 2 of them. I brought one to South North Carolina with me. I built it, I think, in one evening. It's a machining creator kit. The suits, they go together really fast anyways. And I don't know I'm going to paint it. And I probably have like 3 or 4 suits that I've built just because I'm like, I just want to stick something together. And most of the time it's one I just got in my possession. I'm like, I got to build this thing. But yeah, there's not much better than opening a new box like that you just get. I got I think 2 kits that came in the mail today. I want to start one of those too, but I got so much going on right now. I can't, but actually I do have to start one because I have to build it so I can test a resin conversion for it to see how it fits. So yeah, I love starting new kits.
I think that's a common trait among modelers.
I don't know, I mean, I think there are some out there that I see it, the unicorn that I build one at a time. That's it. I mean, look at Jonathan. He typically just builds one at a time, and he won't, like, he has like almost no stash. And
I admire that in some ways.
John Bryan here's looking at you.
Yeah. Discipline. I certainly don't have it with new kits. Jim Bates, what are your thoughts on this matter?
Well, I have 2 different competing thoughts on this topic, and one of them is positive and one of them is negative. So yes, I'm like the rest of you, get a new kit. But unlike TJ, it doesn't immediately end on the bench. It immediately has me going, looking at the books, doing research, because quite honestly, I'm just a researcher who happens to model. So I got the new Airfix Anson a couple weeks ago, and I've been mainlining Anson photos and trying to figure out what I want to do with it and learning all about this. But you mentioned mental health a little bit earlier, and one of the things I always have in the back of my head and I'm always concerned about is buying something new is good, but buying to fill holes because other things in your life aren't going well aren't good. And I'm always kind of sitting there saying, oh, I just spent a lot of money. Was that because I'm really excited about this stuff? Or is it I'm doing things because other things are going wrong? And I am very thoughtful about that, because there is no question that I sometimes just buy stuff because I don't feel good. And that rush of hitting the buy button gives you the endorphins. And there have been times, and I hate to admit this, that like I'll buy something from Hannah's and then the box comes and this box sits unopened. And that's when I realize, oh, that was more the buying was what I needed than the kit itself. And that's what I'm trying to watch. Something like the Anson, fun. I got the Comet, and that sent me down the Comet research world, but none of them have hit the bench yet. So I think I use it as a way to start kind of the research side of things. And then the other thing that happens, and this is the negative side, is I got a whole bunch of Fairy Battle photos in my email a couple days ago. So that makes me want to go build a Fairy Battle. Not that there is one in any scale that's worth building, but so much of it, like I'll see a picture online. Now I got to go build that. And I'm all over the place with that stuff, kind of like I'm all over the place talking about it. But I do worry, getting a kit is awesome, but is it sometime we're doing it to fill other things that are wrong? And I think we need to be thoughtful about, why are we buying? Is it excitement over, the Comet or the giant tank you all got? Or is it something's not quite right and we need to look at that and work on ourselves?
No, that's a really good point. I'm sure I've fallen into both categories, throughout my time in the hobby. No, that's an excellent point.
The retail therapy end of things. Yeah, I think that's probably saved, more for me, Jim. I don't know that it's retail therapy as much as like I tend to fall into the whole, like the Tamiya M40, when that came out. I was like, okay, here's this new really cool artillery piece, and you can buy this great big huge aluminum barrel for it. And I got it and I jumped on it, and I really wasn't ever going to build it, but it's a new shiny Tamiya kit, and so I fall into that a little bit, like I've resisted the Tiger because I'm just not really a Tiger guy. Like JB said, it's an unbelievable value, and I almost bought it, but it's like, for me, the question I kind of ask myself is, am I really going to build this? I mean, it's not a guarantee, but am I really going to build this if I buy it? And if the answer is maybe not, I'm trying to pass on it,
Well, I heard something really, really sad from a friend of mine, that he was helping unload a collection that the local hobby shop had bought. And excluding the fact this guy was a hoarder and he had kits and books and stuff everywhere, what made me sad about it was the guy hadn't opened any of the kits. They were all in their shrink wrap. That really makes me wonder, because like, to me, A kit in the shrink wrap, yeah, maybe it's worth more, but what good does that do? If I'm not coming home and pawing through the sprues and looking for it, what's the point of buying it? And I get a lot of flack for starting a million things and never finishing. But if the enjoyment is starting, if the enjoyment is get what you can get out of it, I'm just amazed there are modelers out there. There's, first of all, there's those freaks that build one kit at a time. I believe those people need therapy. Chris Wallace. And then there's the people who buy kits and don't open them. Like, what's the point of having, all the latest Tamiya kits sitting in the shrink wrap? That's not fun. I don't want to read the box. Though, as a kid, I used to read the cereal box at breakfast when I was bored. But why aren't you opening it and enjoying it? And I think that shows some mental health issues that probably that person needed to look at, is why were they buying this stuff and not opening it?
Not necessarily. I believe and have maintained collecting and building two separate hobbies.
I don't disagree with you. That's a good point of maybe they just wanted to have it on the shelf. So yeah, maybe you're right.
Now, I'm not saying that's the case always.
Right.
But
right.
I have seen, you see it. They are two separate hobbies. I'm guilty of both. I'm not going to build all that behind me.
Right.
But I like having it.
Right. But how many of them are unopened is my question.
More than I'd probably like to admit. Though not all of them had shrink wrap on them to begin with, so that doesn't count.
Right.
Yeah, I look at it like baseball cards. There's people out there that they buy baseball cards, they don't open them, or there's people out there, or comic books are another fantastic recommend. Comic books, people buy them, but they don't open them. They keep them in there sealed, and it's like, I really agree with what TJ said there. It's two different things. Model building and collecting are two different things. Are collectors model builders? Sometimes no, they're not. They're collectors. That's what they do. But I'm also, 100% guilty of both. I have kits that I haven't opened up yet. So I kind of look at it that way.
Yeah. One of the things I'll mention too, Jim, you really get at the heart of the question is, why do you buy something? I think you laid out some good examples. Another one is FOMO. I think a great example is the Comet. I'll be honest, I think it's one of the ugliest vehicles I've ever seen. I have little interest in the thing, but when all my cool friends are getting one and I'm at a hobby shop and one's available, and not only that too, I see that's one aspect of it, the FOMO of your friends. And it's like, man, I got to get in on this. And then obviously TJ building it only further, excites me. So I've bought a barrel off of eBay. I have tracks from Tankcraft coming. I have the Panda model set. And sometimes like that FOMO is an aspect, but then also, I'll be honest, I look at an accessory set. I'm like, I want to use that accessory set, and I need a kit to use it on. Like, great example, the Sherman Calliope, which TJ has, just got from China. The 3D renders of it, the 3D prints, the brass tubes, like, it freaking sells it. And then you see all these people posting it and you're like, oh man, I need one. I need one right now. So yeah, I think there's an aspect of it too, where, dare I say, peer pressure, the FOMO, it's real in those cases.
Well, I agree with that. I am blocking you and reporting you for not being a Comet fan. You guys are really negative towards the limey tanks, and I'm not excited about that.
Ugliest.
Hold on.
Oh, yeah. Churchill, different story.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself. I love British armor. That doesn't mean I think the Comet is the best thing ever. You heard what I said. It's the best tank they made of World War II. I don't think that's even
right.
A competition. It was good. It was a good vehicle. However, it just looks like a Cromwell with a different turret, which guess what? A Cromwell just looks like a Crusader with a different turret.
I love
all the cruiser tanks look the same.
Yeah, the cruiser tanks, they are very similar, but to me, they look like the sports cars of the armor world in World War II.
That's the Crusader.
Yeah, the Crusader is the foxiest one from a visual standpoint. But
the Comet is a Lego brick box with wheels.
I can't deal with all the hate that's happening now. This is just wrong. You all need to write on the blackboard, the Centurion is the greatest tank ever 100 times. And then
I like a Centurion. I love a Centurion. It's the Comet is the one that I just think it looks dopey. I think it's the elongated Cromwell with the big dopey barrel. And then the thing that bothers me is, what is that? Exhaust deflector in the back or some sort of
the Normandy shield.
Yeah, it's ugly as sin. Sorry.
He
Sorry,
said,
we're all wrong, but whatever.
Jim's over there like, excuse me, I'd like to report a hate crime, please.
That's right. You say the long barrel dopey thing, says the guy that loves the Yog Tiger.
Yeah, that's a true statement. I mean, the L70 is a
Yeah, you want to talk about a brick with wheels?
Exactly.
That thing is a brick. It's a square, or I guess a rectangle.
There were reports in World War II when those first were deployed that civilians on the side of the road were laughing and pointing as those drove by.
Well, now that I've done everything I don't believe in and spread hate among the world, all your complaints can be sent to Jim Bates at escalecanadiantv.com. But if you're going to badmouth the British tanks, I'll just delete them.
Oh man. So, one of us has been a little bit quiet. Doug, what are your thoughts on the matter?
I think it's really funny that we talk about this because how many people say, I'm not buying another kit until I do this and this and this and this, or for the rest of the year. And like a week later, they're like, yeah, so I was at Colpar, or I was on eBay, and they've got a whole bunch of, they've just built their stash some more. I love buying a new kit. I don't buy them nearly like I used to. I mean, I used to buy kits just because it was a good price, or it was an airplane I liked, or it was anything to get myself to justify. Not so much anymore, but when I do get one now, it usually makes me very happy. I'm always on the market, on the lookout for if I can find any of the Bandai Starships. I'm pretty happy with that. As far as I'm going to be buying, I don't have it yet, but I'm getting a Comet. I think it's pretty bitchin'. Just so you know, Jim, I like it.
Thank you, Doug. I always knew I liked you the best.
But, it's funny. I was telling Scott this last night. I built a whole bunch of armor last year, and half of them were British. Like, I didn't go out of my way to build British, but I built the Achilles, and I built the Matilda. And I was looking at my little collection over there, and I'm like, wow, I've done a lot of British stuff, and I didn't realize how much I liked them. And the funny thing is, the Matilda itself, never really appealed to me until I built that model. When I built that 48 scale kit, I finished it going, this is really a cool little tank, and I will be building more of those. But going back to the subject, it usually makes me happy to pick up something new. I think retail therapy might come into play, except I can rarely afford retail therapy. So that's okay. And there's no hobby shops close enough to me for me to just drop by and pick something up. So when I get it, I get it because it's something that I've really wanted. Yeah,
a great example, Doug. I think you were probably the person out of all of us that was most jazzed for the M8. I mean, I hadn't seen that from you. I mean, I get that with Star Wars with you, but seeing that it was pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. And you've hooked Scott up too with one.
Yeah, I'm excited about that little kit. It's just a perfect little design. It's going to go together in an hour and a half. And then I can spend as much time as I want painting it and weathering it, because that's my favorite part.
Yeah. And there's some great examples out there. Spencer Pollard's in the Tamiya Mag, and then Ben on the Facebook page. Holy cow. That is a little inspiring build.
Yeah, he did a great job on that for sure.
Well, thank you all for a really spirited discussion. I think it was great seeing a lot of different sides of this topic, and we'd encourage our listeners to participate as well. So tell us your thoughts. Tell us about the excitement of a new kit. Tell us why you maybe don't buy a kit or why you bought a kit. We'd love to hear it. We'd love to share it. And with that, over to you, Grant.
All right, but let's talk about some of our listeners now. So this is a new kind of segment that we're doing, and we all go through our Plastic Posse page and look for builds that we really like. I'm going to go first, and I'm going to steal JB's thunder because he already brought it up. But Ben Crawley's M8 howitzer, that I watched that thing go from nothing to a beautifully weathered M8 vehicle. It does not look 148 scale. I will fight anybody on that. He has done a fantastic job on that vehicle. He has added a little bit here and there, but it has been a very, 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 very good build. And I think we all agree on that. Okay, let's go over to Scott. What do you think, Scott?
Well, first of all, I think you're becoming the godfather little by little. You give people gifts, and then you sit back in your big chair with your cat on your lap, and you're like, there'll come a day. I don't know when that day will be, but there'll come a day, and I'll ask a favor of you.
And you will do it.
That's right. That's right. No, I want to highlight, I want to take off my hat and bow down to the king of Easter eggs. I'm going to go with Cliff Herring's Mark 44 Ammonite in our Mac that group build, man, what an incredible build. And he just keeps going and going. I thought he had reached the heights of Easter eggs. And when he did the pauldron with the funfetti for JB, it was like, okay, this Easter egg thing is now next level. So Cliff, my friend, well done. Fantastic model, fantastic build. I just take my hat off to you. Great job, dude.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I mean, I was looking at it a couple of days ago. You got the crayon marks, you got the California CA, you've got the 3 on the back that stand with the Ranger symbol from the 3rd Battalion Ranger. He's got everybody on that thing, and it's hilarious. It is such a great build, and I'm loving every second of it.
He tagged me a week ago, and he had put a snake on one of the pauldrons. But it wasn't just any snake, whether it was intentional or not. It was a perfect bull snake, and bull snakes are my favorite. There's no way he could have known that. I absolutely love bull snakes, and there's a perfect one on there.
There you go.
I even had to share a picture and said, you just knocked that out of the park, man.
That's great. JB.
Yeah, I just want to note too on Cliff's Ammo Night, it's not only full of Easter eggs, he's going to be the Easter Bunny this season. It's also just flawlessly executed. I mean, it is drop dead gorgeous from an execution standpoint and paint. So a tip of the hat to you, sir, as well. I'll be real quick. I want to highlight John Gray. His KV2 is coming together really, really nicely. Seeing that evolve in the group and his updates, his pigment work on the mud and dust, and really the worn dust marks on the side of that gigantic turret really stick out to me as something super nice. And I'll be honest, it was great to see his work in person. So knowing what it looks like in a picture versus in person, I know it's even better in person when that KV2 hits the table. So I hope we can see it next year at the Seattle show.
Yeah, I echo that, JB. It's a great build. And John, it was great to hang out with you up in Seattle. We had a lot of fun getting to know you. And hopefully your band is rocking them there in Canada.
Yeah, some great work. The stuff he had in Seattle was beautiful. And the KV2 even started painting the figure for it now too, and that's great.
I do want to hit out it. I do want to give a shout out. His band is the Scott Riddle Band, found on Facebook.
Yes.
So we promote our listeners not only in the hobby but outside as well. So everybody go over, give them a like. You can see them on YouTube. My mistake, not Facebook, YouTube. Give them a like and listen.
Actually, I'm a little bit disappointed. I had planned to go up to Vancouver for the weekend to take pictures of tanks and go see John's band play tomorrow night. They're playing Surrey, BC, and unfortunately the weather is rainy and it's hard to take pictures of tanks outside in the rain. So
what are you, 90? I can't drive in the rain?
Did I just say anything about driving? I said it's hard to take pictures of tanks in the rain.
Where are there tanks up there?
There's a Ram. So there were 3 I was going to hopefully see. There's a Ram and a Sherman Easy 8 in downtown Vancouver by the Armory. It's, I think, one of the 3 or 4 Rams left. And then there's a Centurion somewhere hidden away as well. So I was going up there to look at some of those and see what else we could find. We're going to just hit all the tanks and then go see John's band. But unfortunately, that got kicked back to April.
Imagine rain in Vancouver.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Yeah, I think it's by the Molson factory up there. I'm not sure. TJ, what about you?
I'm going to go with Aaron's 48 scale A7V. He just posted it right before we started recording this. I believe that's the one that was a Secret Santa present from, I think John got that for him. Aaron's an awesome modeler, one of the best modelers I know. So it's going to look awesome when he's done with it.
Yeah, it's going to be great in 148 scale too. That's just like, I think that's going to be a really good size. But yeah, can't wait to see what that turns out to look like.
Yeah, it's going to be nice. It's perfect tank for that scale too. I mean, 87's a big tank, but it's also very cool with those slat sides on it. It's going to be nice. What about you, Doug?
I want to talk about Martin Drayton's little vignette he did. It's of a LSSC, the Light Seal Support Craft, on the river in what looks like Southeast Asia. There's a few soldiers heading towards it. The water looks real good. The bank it's got a lot of plants and things. It's not big, but it's got something going on everywhere without being overwhelming. There's no empty space in it. And what I really, really like about it, what really impresses me about it is, other than the base, he did all of that work on the road because he's a flight attendant, and he did this out of hotel rooms, and it just kind of, dare I say, blows my cookies. That he could do that, because I've worked out of a hotel room once before. I mean, no experience doing it, but it's not that easy. I mean, you've got to drag a bunch of stuff with you to be able to do the work. Yeah, I'm really impressed.
Yeah, he's like the king of on the road model making. Some of the stuff he produces on the road, or 90% of the stuff he produces on the road, is fantastic. He just does great work.
It still blows my mind that he's so new to doing this stuff.
Oh, I know.
Just a few years.
We need to start breaking fingers, I think. I'm getting really to that point with him. All right, Jim, do you have anything for us?
I do, and I'm going to make up for calling John Byron. Is it Brian? I'm not sure.
Brian.
Brian. I'm going to make up for calling him a monster for building one model at a time. He's still a monster for that, but his RF-84 he did in 48 in SEA scheme from the TAN model kit was awesome. And I've seen that kit, and it does have some issues, so it wasn't just a shake and bake. But I'm kind of struggling because as a kid, I kind of hated the SEA scheme, and the older I get, the more I love it. And he just nailed it. It looks so good. And I'm sorry to bring airplanes into this discussion, but good job, John. Can't wait to see what you're doing next.
All right. I appreciate that, guys. Let's go ahead and pass it over to Scott.
All right. Thank you, Grant. Well, let's talk about some upcoming model shows and events. For us, of course, next weekend is the 48 and 48. A couple weekends after that, March 25th, we've got Commies Fest over at the Wings Over the Rockies Centennial Facility. Super excited to go there. If you're in the Denver area, please come to the show, support them. They're a great group. The Commies is a great club. You know, we've been to previous shows, and they're just a great group of people. And I'm excited to see this new facility. So come on out if you can. And of course, we'll have some pictures and some live streams from that event. If you do come, we will have Funfetti, great group of modelers over there, incredible, guys over there. So you're going to see top-notch work. We also have IPMS Hamilton's Heritage Con, which is on Sunday, March 26th. That's over at the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum in Hamilton, Ontario. I know that's going to be a fantastic show. They're going to announce the winner of the Musaroo Cup, and that's going to be a fantastic show. A lot of great modelers up in that area. We're sorry we won't be able to attend this year, but hopefully soon. Mr. Bates here has told us what an incredible museum that is, and what a great format that is to have a model show. Anybody that's in that area, encourage you to go attend that. We have Tricon show March 25th at the Beatty Career Center in Pittsburgh. JB, I think that's one of the chapters that you're familiar with.
Yeah, that Tricon is special in my heart. To be honest, I hope to fly back one day and do it. It's held by IPMS Three Rivers. It's at a location a little bit north of the city. Really, really nice show. Always garners a lot of great participation. And to be honest, I'm super jealous of this year because I've done this show, and then the following day is Heritage Con. So we have our local show in Pittsburgh, and then we hop in the car at 4 p.m. and drive straight to Toronto or Hamilton, Ontario. And what's great is the Canadians usually flip. So they'll come down for our Saturday show. So Harvey Lowe, Jerry, and a bunch of those folks, Sandy, they'll hit our show, and then we'll caravan up. We'll stop in Buffalo for dinner, and then we get into Hamilton in the evening and then do the show on Sunday. So I hope some of those folks are doing it. Both shows are great. I miss them. I hope all the East Coast boys and girls are still doing great at those shows because it's just a great community in Region 4.
Awesome. That sounds terrific. We're not done yet. We still have a few more to talk about. We have the annual Indy Roscoe Turner Invitational Contest and Swap Meet. That's going to be held Saturday, April 15th. And I know that that's a show that a lot of listeners of our podcast and some of the other podcasts like to go to. And so again, if you're in that area, please support them. It's going to be a great event. We have on May 5th and 6th, the MFCA show at the Radisson Hotel, Philadelphia East. TJ's, kind of spoken about that. That's one of the biggest figure shows in the nation. It's got unbelievable reputation. The modelers and the models that you're going to see there are absolutely top notch. So, look forward to that event. It's one of the shows that I've got on my to-do list. I don't think I'm going to make it this year, but really want to go to that show someday. Also on that same weekend, unfortunately, we got a little bit of an overlap there. We have the AMPS Nationals at Camp Hill, Pennsylvania on May 5th and May 6th. armor builders, maybe try and do that. It's unfortunate that's the same weekend at MFCA, but maybe some of the people in the local area can maybe hopefully hop from one show to the other. If you can, support them as well. And then, of course, IPMS Nationals, San Marcos, Texas, August 2nd through the 5th. Our own Mr. John Bonani has talked a little bit about some of the incredible seminars. Registration is open. Encourage everybody to register. A lot of the seminars are already selling out, so don't miss out. Don't be sad. Don't be in Texas and be sad you didn't get a slot. And man, we're looking forward to it. JB is part of a really great crew with that group down there in Texas. They're itching to do this. They kind of got put off by COVID, and this is their big chance. So I think it's going to be a fantastic show. Great area. They're going to have lots of great tours. Don't miss it. If there are any local shows in your area, you have a chapter of AMPS or IPMS or even just kind of individual shows, go ahead and send those to us. Email us at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com or post those in our Plastic Posse group. We encourage that. We want to support people getting out to shows and events. We have a blast when we go out to these things, and feel free to email us those or post those in the group.
Can I jump in and add one more show? There is a IPMS Seattle will be bringing back their spring show this year. I think this is the first time since COVID, and it will be Saturday, April 29th at the Renton Community Center. This is a true contest with vendors, and it sounds like they've got a ton of vendors, and I think I've warned them, be ready for a ton of models, and it's a fun day out for a IPMS show, and only bad news is they've asked me to judge, which kind of sucks, but it's a fun day out.
I was just going to mention Renton's a beautiful little area. That's where our Airbnb was, and really enjoyed the sight and sounds of it. And I'll be honest, a little jealous that we aren't going back because I'd booked the same place.
Hey, come back.
You are the now official Plastic Posse podcast house finder, JB.
Yeah.
I swear to God, we had a koi pond, people. Yeah,
we're not there 10 minutes, and a de Havilland Beaver float plane takes off like right in front of us, and then we go in the backyard and we're like, oh look, we've got a waterfall and koi.
And we were 10 minutes from Skyway and 10 minutes from the Museum of Flight. It was
it was just awesome. I mean, there was a great little coffee shop, right? With walking distance from
Winnie's.
Yeah, and that was, you are officially now responsible for that.
And night shift on the TV, so everything was good.
Awesome. Well, again, send us those shows, and we'd be happy to talk about them. Let's hear a word from one of our great partners, Bases by Bill, and on the other side, we will get a Mac Group build update from Mr. Haller.
The Triple P Mac Group Build is sponsored by Bases by Bill. Bases by Bill specializes in making beautifully crafted wooden custom display solutions for scale models. Built by modelers for modelers, these premium quality display cases and innovative base designs are available for just about any model and size. Their custom size display bases ranging from 4 to 30 inches provide the perfect foundation for dioramas and vignettes. And remember, if you don't see what you need, just ask. Chances are they can customize the perfect solution for you. Check out basesbybill.com and see their new custom display products for busts and figures. Use the code POSSE15 at checkout to apply a 15% listener discount to your order. Bases by Bill for all your model display needs. All right, let's take a quick look over at the Mac SF3D group build. Fair amount of stuff going on. Some things I want to highlight. We've already touched on Cliff Herring's amazing Mark 44. That's awesome. Bill Huffman is doing fantastic job on a raccoon. He's got that thing all souped up. I think he's even put LEDs in it. It's on YouTube, so go check that out. Another one I want to highlight is our good friend Martin Drayton is working on I think he's got a Grossa Hund. It's one of those. I don't know which one it is exactly. He went with hand-painted lacquer paint camo a la Lincoln Wright. Looks really cool. I think he's getting ready to build a little base for it. And I think that's pretty much what I wanted to touch on. I think that's what caught my eye.
Yeah, we've got feedback this week. We've got a lot of feedback this week. As a matter of fact, I'm going to launch into that right now. I'm going to start with Scott Daniel. He's a newbie. He's writing in on our scale and subject discussion. Said newbie to modeling here, still growing in the hobby. I've kept to one scale, that's 1/72nd, one genre, that's aircraft, and one time period, World War II thus far, and my small stash reflects this. On listening to episode 63 of the podcast, where it was generally encouraged that a mix-up of what you do can strengthen your skills, I took a step in my recent purchases and changed scale and era to an Edward 148 Sopwith F1 Camel and a Tamiya 148 F4U A1 Corsair. I didn't brave a genre change one step at a time. These may sit in my stash for a while, but I'm excited that they're there. And he's asking for any kit recommendations that we're willing to throw out there.
Tamiya 148 scale is a good place to start. I think that Corsair is something that he'll really enjoy. I personally think that the Tamiya's newer 148 scale kits, like their Spitfire Mark 1, their BF 109 G6, they have a KI 61, an IL2 Sturmovik. They're all really, really nice. So yeah, if you want to go from 172 to some really nice 148 scale, they build up well. The engineering is flawless. So that would be my recommendation. And then if you do 48 scale Tamiya aircraft, you can be like our friend Doug and kind of nudge over into 148 scale Tamiya armor.
You might find out you love it, because I do. I love, especially the Tamiya kits. The Tamiya 148th armor kits are wonderful.
I just wish they did more of them. That's my only real complaint. The range is kind of small.
Believe it or not, Jim, they have over 100 kits now in that 148 scale range.
No, I know they do, but I wish they had 200. The other kits I'd recommend in 48 that are nice are Edwards Spitfires and Edwards Hellcats. I hear the Mustangs as well, but I've never built one of those. But they do some nice stuff. And then if he's looking at 72 Arma, I'm an Arma honk. They're great kits.
Yeah, Airfix too. I mean, Airfix has some nice stuff.
Yeah, I'm a Airfix apologist. I think Airfix tends to do better in 72 than they do in 48. Like I was working on their Sea Fury, and there's a few things missing from it, whereas their 72 stuff is pretty nice. But I did get their new Anson, and it's beautiful.
I was going to say that Anson kit, it reminds me, dare I say, of like, oh gosh, like it's good. It's really good. I'll say Tamiya-esque in a sense, from sprue layout and just general looks of the sprue and how it was built up at Telford. It was crisp, and same with their big spit as well.
The other one that I have, and I haven't started it yet, their 72nd scale Meteor. Like the plastic is a step above what they've been using. So I'm hoping that we're seeing them kind of get away from that kind of soapy gray plastic and have something a little crisper, because I always have been of the opinion that the cheap plastic is making their kits look less stellar than they are, and increasing their plastic will make the kits look better. And the Meteor and the Anson, I haven't seen the Spitfire yet, and I hope I don't, because I'll probably buy one, even though
Steve Baker's got one. We'll have him bring it to commies.
I know. It's what I'm afraid of, is he'll bring it and then I'll want to buy one, because I'm trying to avoid it, because like that's the perfect kit that I will buy and never build.
Another one of the subjects we discussed was references, whether we use books or digital media or anything in between. And we got a couple of people talking about that, including Ryan Smith, who says, another great episode. As far as reference books go, I have digital versions and often refer to them. I like Pinterest and just Googling. But I think I agree with Jensen and TJ. There's something about having a book. I just plunked down a good wad of cash to a new friend who is thinning his reference book stash. Being new to modeling communities, it's great to get out of my legend in my own mind mentality and see the truly great talent and friendship in local groups and online. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, Ryan's actually a local here in Utah, and he's been participating in our AMPS group. He's a really, really nice guy. So, hey, Ryan, thanks for writing in.
Okay, then Rob Perlman. I'm in my mid-30s and I really prefer books. Anyways, I've heard your description of Douglas Lee and his book, and I managed to find one single copy available from a Canadian online used bookstore. I snatched it up and I am looking forward to reading it. Thanks for the recommendation.
You're going to really love that book. That like I said, that's the book that I go back to all the time. His stuff is so phenomenally done, and it's all 99% scratch. You'll enjoy the book. You really will.
Right. I'm going to bring up for at least the third time tonight, Martin Drayton. And what he said, I don't know why he's just not a regular on the show. We talk about him all the time. We quote him all the time. So we should just have him on, right? He says, "Hi, guys. I just listened to episode 64. Awesome as ever." I'm sorry, I can't do this in his accent, so I'm just going to read it my own way, okay? "I'm always sad when I reach the end. Great to hear an interview with internet buddy Zach Pease. He's such a great guy. Regarding books, I'm not young like Jensen. I'm actually older than all of you, but I'm kind of new to the hobby, having had 40 years away. I've recently discovered reference books and love them. I'm currently reading The Pictorial History of the 3rd Armored Division and Spearhead, which is helping me to build a Pershing. My head is full of diorama ideas now. However, as a flight attendant, portability is really important to me, traveling 20 plus days every month. Having digital material on my phone is super convenient when I snatch odd moments here and there during my workday. Building models in my hotel room means I'm already carrying quite a bit of gear, so adding a large book to the load isn't super practical. As it is, I leave a bunch of stuff at home in order to get all my paints and the kit box itself. If I carried books too, I'd have zero clothes in my bag. I'm on a bit of a modeling budget, and books are not cheap, but my rarest commodity is time. A book takes more time, and that's something I don't have much of. Thanks again for doing what you do, and hopefully see you guys soon."
You know, his storytelling and his output is just, it's remarkable. So just keep it up, Martin. He claims to be older than all of us, but I don't know. Either he has discovered the fountain of youth, or I think he might be overestimating his age a little bit. So I'm not sure which it is.
Anyway, so that's what we have as far as feedback for this episode. If you have anything to say to us, any questions to ask, feel free to email us or message us on the Plastic Posse Facebook page or the Plastic Posse podcast at gmail.com. Also, if you want everybody's opinion outside of just us, just share your questions and your love for everything on the Plastic Posse Facebook page. That it's super active. We get dozens of posts every day and lots of people that are there to answer any question you may have.
Well, thanks so much, Doug. It's always great hearing from our listeners, and I look forward to next episode when we hear back from them again. So right now, I want to take a moment and introduce our special segment with David Grummit from Military Modelcraft International. David is the head editor there, good friend of the podcast, and just a really, really interesting conversation. We learn about him, we learn about the hobby, we learn about the mag, and I am looking forward to sharing it with all of our listeners. So sit back, grab your favorite beverage, and let's go. All right, listeners, today we have a special guest, David Grummit from Military Modelcraft International. It is an internationally published magazine that focuses on armor modeling, and we are so excited to talk to him today. With me is TJ Haller from DC.
Hey, guys.
And then the guest of honor, David, coming all the way from the UK.
Hi there. Hi, thanks.
David, thank you so much for joining us. You're the editor of one of the premier magazines out there for scale modeling, specifically related to armor modeling, and you have some other genres as well and other mags. We're going to cover all that today. Really, to start off, I'd love to just ask a basic question to give our listeners a little background about yourself. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've always been a modeler for as long as I remember, really, and tanks were always the thing. I got a bit sidetracked, I suppose, as many of us do when I was at university, and I got really into Games Workshop. And when I left university when I was 21, I had a sort of choice, if you like. I went for an interview at Games Workshop for the job of games designer. And if any of you know Games Workshop or know the world of historical wargaming, you'll know the name Rick Priestley. I was completely awestruck. I was interviewed by Rick Priestley, who was one of my kind of heroes at the time. And at the end of it, he offered me the job of a games designer at Games Workshop. And I thought, wow, this is fantastic. Until they told me that I had to live in a house in Lenton with all the other Games Workshop guys. And I just thought, no, this is too much for me. So I went off and did a history PhD. So for many years, until the start of the pandemic, I was a history professor. I worked at universities teaching history. I always, I stayed on with the modeling. And in around, I suppose it was about sort of 2002, 2003, I joined a modeling club. And I say to anybody who isn't a member of a modeling club, do join one, because just that opened up a whole new angle to the hobby to me. I met like-minded people. And some of those guys became, really lifelong friends, I think. And, I still see many of them now. But through those guys, I got involved in Military Modelcraft International, which was then edited by a guy called Tony Little. And so this was about 2005, 2006. And back then, the UK modelling scene, the UK modelling market in terms of magazines, was very much dominated by military modelling. We all grew up with military modelling. And then there was Military Modelcraft International, which, to be honest, was right down at the bottom of the pile. It was a long-standing magazine, but it had a very small circulation. And it wasn't one that I think that the armour modelers really thought of first and foremost when they were, thinking about the magazines that they buy. There was Tamiya Mag, there was Spencer Pollard, who was then editing Military and Scale, and of course Ken Jones at Military Modelling. And then in 2009, so I did a few articles for them. And then in 2009, my friend and I had been to the Torrent show in Spain. And I got back, and almost as soon as I got back, the phone rang, and it was Tony Little. And Tony had had such a tragedy. His wife had literally dropped dead that day. She was only, she was in her 50s, something that's completely unexpected. And Tony knew I was a writer. He knew I'd done some publishing and, through history and things. And he said to me, David, can you edit the next issue of the magazine? And I, sure, so I did that. I was already on Missing Links, and I don't know whether this was in the days before Facebook or not. I can't remember, to be honest. But I'd already been in touch with a few guys like Lou Rodriguez. There was a couple of other guys who I sort of met at shows and things, Alex Clark and a few of these guys. And I basically said to them, look, will you do some articles for me? And Tony said, could you take over the magazine? I'm not in a space that I can do it. So that was back in 2009. And, here we are 14 years later. And Military Modelcraft is a very different beast. We worked really hard over the past 14 years to do that. And we've done that really by really reaching out to the community and really making those contacts with guys. Now, every time we put out a new issue, it's shared all over Facebook, and we have so many people who support the magazine. And it's just, again, part of that, really wonderful community of international modelers. And you said that right at the beginning, John, that name, Military Modelcraft International, it really is an international title. So so my journey to be an editor of Military Modelcraft International and now managing editor at Guideline Publication was really, an unusual one, and one just really purely by accident.
That's really awesome. I mean, it's sad how it all began. It's unfortunate, but you've really harnessed that opportunity. And I agree with you. I think what's great about your mag is just the sheer number of contributors, and it's always looked at as a very positive magazine. And you mentioned, going after the community. Can you talk a little bit about, if there's people out there posting online, tell them, I guess, how to get recognized, how to get noticed, maybe what's a great way to get in contact with you?
Yeah. I mean, for me, the magazine is two things. First and foremost, it is a visual media. So having great photographs is absolutely key. And I think it's one of the things which I think, David Parker with AFE Modeler really changed the landscape there by saying, actually, the way we present our models in print or the way we present our models online is so important. But as well as that, for me, certainly, and something that I think makes the magazine fresh is the writing. So for me, it's really important that when people write a modeling article or they present a model on the internet or whatever, they have some story. There's some background there. I mean, some of my favorite articles in the magazine over the years have been by people like Ken Abrams and Anthony Guideras, because they tell a story. They really let you know about that journey that they took in making that model. And then they do great, it's a great model, and then they take great photos. So for me, I think, and particularly now, if you want to get noticed, I think, as a modeler, if you want to raise your profile as a modeler, it's really important to think about how you present it. And by that, I don't mean just, that you put lots of pots of your favorite paint in front of the picture and everything. It's actually, I think it's all about you telling us something about you as a modeler and your journey and what the hobby means to you. One of the really interesting things that we got, not so much with Modelcraft International, but with our fantasy modeling title, is lots of guys at the end the end of the pandemic, telling us about how the hobby and how figure painting in particular had been a real lifeline for them during the pandemic, and we tried to capture some of that in the articles that we've been publishing in that magazine. So as an editor, I'm looking for I'm looking for great models, but I'm looking for models that have a story to them. And sometimes they may not be a gold award-winning piece, but they'll be an interesting model, and they may be interesting because it's a historical angle, or they may be interesting because it didn't turn out quite as they expected, or that they discovered a new technique. So it's all about, really doing something that stands out. In the magazine, we've just taken it up to 100 pages in each issue. So I was kind of worked out that basically over the next 12 months, I have about 1,000 pages of modeling content to fill. So you talk about having a wide range of contributors. I mean, with that amount of content, we do need lots of contributors. So I'm always looking for new contributors, but I'm always looking for new angles and really interesting stories.
Yeah, one thing I do want to hit on, I think it's really important that you brought up the storytelling aspect. I only mention this because certain magazines, it's almost like a transactional article where it's X plus Y equals Z. And there isn't, dare I say, the human or modeling element to it. And I love that that's the type of article that you're looking for the magazine. And some of the names that you already mentioned, Tony, also Ken Abrams, like those are great examples. Alex Clark is another one that I've read his articles, and he tells the story around scratch building. And in my mind, that's so important to be coupled with the photographs. And I think your magazine really strikes a great balance for that.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, and sometimes those contacts that you make as an editor are completely serendipitous. So sometimes I'll see a great article on Facebook and I'll go after the guy and send the guy a message, or sometimes they'll send me a message. But then occasionally I get an email completely out of the blue saying, here's an article, would you like to consider it? And I read it and I just think, wow, this is really special. And we had a case of that just a few months ago with a Canadian modeler who I hadn't heard of. Maybe you have, maybe he's on different people's Facebook feeds, but he wasn't on my kind of Facebook social media radar. And he was a modeler called Chris Johnson. And he...
his work is great.
Yeah, and I hadn't come across him. And he sent in an article which was a conversion of a particular M3 hard track used by the South Alberta Regiment. And it was such a great article for all of those reasons. It was about the journey, about how he came across this, how he did the research, how he then thought about how can I create this in miniature, and then the model, the article about the model making. And it was such a great article. I remember years ago, you'll probably recall it, but magazines used to have, letters to the editor. I don't get very many letters to the editor, to be honest. I always kind of think that's a good thing, in that letters tend to be, complaints. I mean, a good model magazine is like the kind of water company. As long as it's, when it's working well, you don't notice it. You just kind of, just enjoy the content. But I had half a dozen emails and letters about Chris's work and how delighted people were to read that kind of approach. And subsequently, we've got something from Chris in the March issue that will be out later this month. But that was entirely kind of just off his back. He just reached out to me, and as soon as I could, I put the article into print. So I guess the moral of that story, John, is that if people want to share their story, if they have something that they want to send in, then just send it in. And I'll always try and respond positively. I mean, sometimes the articles aren't suitable for the magazine, and that's usually for one of two reasons. The first is the photos, and I might talk a little bit about some of the technicalities of that later. But sometimes because the article just doesn't really tell a story. It's that kind of transactional article that you were talking about. It's like, here's a new kit, and I built it and painted it. And you think, well, great. In a way, we're running 7, 8, 9 model articles a month. So there will always be some articles like that. But hopefully what I'm really looking for is every issue to have 2 or 3 of those articles that really tell a story. And that's what's really important for me.
Yeah, I think another example is Daniel Brooker's work. He does such unique vehicles. We had the opportunity to meet him over at Telford at Bovington, actually. And I have one of his works, the Panther 2. And that's the type of article that I love to see in your magazine, where it's a step more than just building the model, but then it's also talking about the story behind it. And those are just so valuable, I find.
Yeah. And sometimes that story can be, as I say, sometimes that story can be history, as it was for Chris with the South Alberta Regiment command vehicle. Sometimes it can be just model making, like, as you say, like some of Dan's scratch build articles or Alex's. And sometimes it can just be, if you like, musing on the hobbies. You know, and I really love that stuff. I speak to Tony quite not as frequently as I'd like to. But when we do talk, we always, he always has these great ideas. But of course, that's one of the other things. And you were saying this yourself just before we started recording, that actually writing an article is not easy. It takes many modelers are really critical about their work, and they're critical about their models, but they're also really critical, I think, about their writing. And I think unless you, I always say that writing is a little bit like sort of drinking and running. The more you do, the better you become. And most of us, I write for a living. That's what I do. But I know that if you don't, it really is a daunting thing. And to put yourself out there and put your work out there in print is a really big deal.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the one thing I always struggled with before I started writing articles was, just getting up the gumption to send a message to an editor and being open to the feedback, not only for the photographs, but the writing as well. Yeah, like you said, you put yourself out there. It's no different than going to a show and putting your work on the table, except I'd say this time it's probably magnified, internationally for that matter.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, I think probably the majority of our contributors, and this has really been the case since I took over, English isn't their first language. And one of the things that I think has really, I'm not a linguist. I can kind of read a bit of French and I can read a bit of German, but I have no Spanish, I have no Polish, and I have no Czech. And they're the guys who we have many writers from those countries. But I always say to them now, submit your stuff. Please submit your article in your native language, because there are great translation tools out there online now. Google's an obvious one, but there are many, and I use several different ones. I also have, over the years, I've got some great friends all over the world who can translate. And certainly, if there's a difficult word or a difficult phrase, if I run it through a translation program and it doesn't quite sound right, I've got guys who I can go to and say, look, what's he trying to say here? Writing in your own language is where your voice is, isn't it? And I think it's as an editor, it's a fine line between editing for meaning and editing for telling the story, and then maintaining that authorial voice. So it's really important that the modeler's own voice gets through there. And I think one of the things which I've sometimes struggled with reading some of the other magazines and books which are translated into English is that translation and that editing isn't there. For me, being an editor, this is what I do. This is my job. Editing and writing is a really important part of getting across that story and producing a really good magazine. And I think, everybody loves looking at the pictures. Everybody loves looking at nice models. But actually, I do think that people enjoy reading. And that, I think, is one of the sort of the differences and one of the advantages that print media still has. It is something to read rather than just to look at.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. One of the things I was going to mention, not only coupled with that story, is maybe if I could ask some technical questions about article writing that our listeners might be curious of. When you look for an article, typically how many words is that?
Yeah, so a 5-page article in Modelcraft runs out usually at between 1,500 and 2,000 words, with usually between 8 and 12 photographs on the double spread. So I usually work to around 500 words a page. Some of our longer articles can be up to 4,000 words. So they're quite lengthy, they're quite lengthy pieces, some of them. And for a 8-page article, you're probably looking at around 35 photos in all. One of the things which I must admit, we all have things which really annoy us at work, kind of thing. And I'm afraid one of the things that really annoys me as an editor is, just being swamped with hundreds of photographs and not with no indication of how they, link up to the text. And people will say to me, well, you're the editor, you choose the photos. And I said, well, but you're the modeler, you know what these photos are trying to, I have no idea what this photo is showing. You choose the photos, you choose the 20 or 30 photos that tell your story. So again, we come back to just how important it is that an article, tells a story. And it may be, you've got an article, you've got a photograph where something's gone horribly wrong. Let's include that. It doesn't have to be, the
sunshine and rainbows the whole time.
Yeah, you need to tell the story, warts and all, don't you? Because everybody's models never quite go, well, certainly mine don't. They never quite go as I want them to. There's always something at the end of it. You think, oh God, I wish I'd done that differently or next time. But yeah, those 4 or 5 gigabyte folders with photos are not welcome when they come in, I'm afraid.
I have a few other technical questions on photos, then I'll kick it over to TJ to segue into another topic. For photos, I'd be curious, do you prefer JPEG or RAW?
JPEG. I leave all this to my designer, but he tells me that JPEGs are fine. I mean, as long as the photo is well lit, you know what the white balance is all about. All of the photos, of course, are converted into 300 DPI TIFFs for publication anyway. So JPEGs are absolutely fine as they come off the camera with no editing. So that's what my designer does. He edits the photos, and I've worked with Mark now for about 10 years. And Mark's a really great designer because he's a modeler himself. So I will send him a photo and he will know instinctively how to crop it, how to, what's the bit of that photograph that the reader needs to see. And he's very good at that. And I think, again, that's one of the things that works, really well. I mean, I think other magazines have, or certainly books, tend to have flashier designs maybe, but you have to remember that with a monthly magazine, it is non-stop. As soon as you finished one issue, you're straight out on the other. So magazines or books that come out, 4 or 5 times a year or books which are one-off is a completely different design process to I always think about how people produce newspapers, like you're doing a newspaper every day. Well, we're doing 100 pages of magazine every month. And I've just finished March, so I've had a few days off, but on Monday, straight back into it. It really is it is a bit of a conveyor belt, but keeping it fresh is I think is one of the challenges actually. It is a challenge when you've got, let's say you've got 1,000 pages of modeling content to produce over the next year, but yet trying still to find something that is interesting. And I hope we're doing that. I'm really happy with how the magazine's looking at the moment and the kind of feedback we're getting. So hopefully we're doing something right.
Oh, I think you certainly are. I have one more question about photography. It's probably stylistic. You mentioned putting pots of paint next to models. Are you a fan of showing a pure progress shot with a model at that state, or do you not mind like a pot of paint there as a product placement? Just your thoughts on it. Just curious how you like it.
I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because it's something that we've struggled with over the years. And of course, what you have to remember about Guideline and about all of those pots of paints that you see is that as well as being a hobby, it is also a business. We sell advertising. Without advertising, the magazine wouldn't run. I mean, simple as that. So, we have to support our advertisers. Equally, what's really difficult is sometimes when we have lots of product placements from people perhaps who are sponsored by a company that doesn't advertise with us. And that can be, that can be quite tricky. We've had a little bit of that this year. But for those guys, the paint manufacturers, and for us as a magazine, it is business as well. So, and that's where it's slightly uncomfortable sometimes because, our contributors, we pay them for their content, but they are doing it as almost all of them as they are modelers, they're hobbyists, and they're taking time out of their hobby and time out of their lives to kind of to make this model and to produce the article. But behind all that are obviously loads of businesses for whom this is also this is how we make our living.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for that input. I'll kick it over to TJ to take us another direction.
So as someone who kind of walks both lines between military and fantasy and figure modeling myself, can you talk a little bit about Fantasy Figures International as a magazine and kind of how that maybe differs from the military side of it, other than obviously the subjects?
Yeah. So we've been publishing fantasy now for just over 2 years. So Guideline's director is a guy called Alan Corkill, who's been in the publishing business for a long time, and he works with Tom Foxon, who's our kind of advertising guy. And together they suggested to me about 3 years ago now. I think we'd been to a SMC show in in the Netherlands. And we were just blown away by the quality and quantity of figures, particularly sci-fi and fantasy. And Alan said, look, let's do this. Let's do a sci-fi and fantasy magazine. And I was like, oh, okay, right. I don't really have contacts in that side of the hobby, but I'll see what I can do. And it took a few sort of issues to kind of get off the ground, really, because we had a few historical figures in there to begin with. We had some kind of almost like what if military subjects. Ken was right at the beginning, did this wonderful kind of zombie apocalypse conversion of a Sherman that was in the first issue of Fantasy Figures International, and it was really eclectic. It was a really eclectic collection of subjects in that first issue. I'm just about to start on issue 20, and I think we're now pretty established as a title that is exactly that. It is fantasy and sci-fi figures and modeling. And we've got Gundam in there, we've got Machine and Krieger, and then we've got Warhammer, we've got Star Wars, and then we've just got, fantasy figures. But it's all about painting and modeling. And that title is really, again, is growing, it's moving in the right direction. What's really interesting is how different genres, if you like, or different kind of subgroups within the hobby have different cultures. So one of the things that you'll notice in fantasy figures is that there are not many people who publish a second article with us, and I hope it's not because the experience of publishing with us is so awful. But certainly when it comes to figure painting, my feeling is that figure painters will snap a quick picture off on the bench for their Instagram feed, but they're not. It's a much more organic process than building, say, a plane or a tank. So it's much more difficult for those guys, I think, to capture their work in progress in the same way as modelers do. So we really struggle with finding contributors who can produce those kinds of articles. What we have done, and some really good examples of this, are people like Steve Garcia and Dave Colwell from Australia, and they've done interview articles for us. So we actually have an interview with those guys, asking them, again, to tell their story, and then that's illustrated with photographs of their figures. And I love that interview style article. We've done the first one in Modelcraft, actually, in March, which I'm delighted to say John has provided. But that's a lovely, I think that's a really lovely type of article. You get to see a whole gallery of people's models, and you get to see really get to understand something about those, a fellow hobbyist. And that works really well for our fantasy title. The fantasy title is 100 pages too now. So again, we're really looking for new contributors. So if you are a figure painter, if you're a sci-fi or a fantasy modeler, please do reach out, and I'd love to consider your work for fantasy.
So I'm going to assume that you kind of look for the same type of structure and picture style with the fantasy side as you do with the military side. Would that be correct?
Yeah, we are. I mean, I think we're even more flexible, to be honest. I think so. My designer for fantasy figures is a guy called Andy Whitaker, who is, if you've looked at it recently, he's an absolutely superb designer. Again, he is. Andy's not a modeler, but he's a figure collector, and he's a really good graphic designer. So recently, we had in the last issue in our sort of centerfold, Krzysztof Urban, who's a Polish modeler, who did this fantastic piece with a Alternity Miniatures kayak with a stalker figure, and it's kind of Poland, it's the River Vistula, I think, in sort of 2086, and it's kind of clogged with rubbish, and there's loads of garbage bags that he's scratch built. It's an absolutely marvelous piece. I saw it on Facebook, and immediately I sent him a message asking if he published with us, and I'm really delighted that he has done. And it's a marvelous piece. I mean, it really is. And Andy's presented it in a really nice way. Now, those pictures were on black backgrounds. Some of them were kind of against just taken on the bench, but we're a little bit more flexible, and because it's only at the moment a quarterly title, we've got a little bit more of a run in terms of how we think about the design. We're not so wedded to the templates that we inevitably have to use for our 2 monthly titles, which are Military Modelcraft International and Scale Aircraft Modeling.
Yeah, I've seen that piece. I've chatted with him a little bit on Instagram. It's it's amazing. It's really good.
Yeah, I mean, it just blew me away. So, you scroll through your feed, don't you? And you see lots of great models, and then every now and again you see something. Wow, okay, I would love, and as soon as I saw it, I thought I know that will work as the centerfold in Fantasy Figures International. And it really does. And that was a great piece. And we've done that. We've done that a couple of times. I think I do that more probably with fantasy than I do with military. I mean, in each of our issues of military, probably about half the contributors are regular contributors. So we've got people like Raymond Segura, we've got Lukasz from Poland, we've got Marek Zendolka from Slovakia. We've got loads of guys who publish with us probably 4 or 5 times a year, and they are, they're real stalwarts, and they, I couldn't do the magazine without them. Fantasy is a little different. I'm kind of constantly looking for new people, and to be honest, it's a struggle sometimes to get the right balance, and that's something that I'm always working on. For me, you have to have a sort of a balance, and in Modelcraft, I'm so lucky because I've got so many contributions. I can always have some small scale stuff. I can always have some World War I can have World War II. I can always have something contemporary, something Cold War. I can spread it out. Fantasy, it's a little bit more difficult not to have a magazine that's just full of basically stalkers and Star Wars.
Yeah, I love the Fantasy Mag. I think one of the first issues that you posted was the Machining Krieger armor suit lineup. One of our good friends that we know, Brian Krieger, that's his collection. Yeah, I mean, his style is exactly what you're looking for, I think, in that magazine. And he certainly tells a story too, and I love to see it. And I love the format of the mag too. Like you said, it's a little different. I think the biggest problem for me is actually finding it in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, we were selling. Well, we sold all our mags through Barnes and Noble. And I think, MMI and Sam are in all Barnes & Noble stores in the US. But we've always had problems with US distributors, or rather finding the right US distributor. So there's always a really annoying lag between, you guys getting copies of the mag on the newsstands over there. It can be you can be a couple of issues behind. I mean, we have the same thing over here when we're looking for, US mags. It's just one of those things. And magazine distribution. I mean, I think it might be worth something just saying something a little bit about magazine distribution. I think a lot of I always talk jokingly about guideline towers, and I think people sometimes imagine that the magazine is produced in this kind of like newsroom, with some banks of computers and designers, and it's all very slick. And actually, it's me sitting at the kitchen table editing in the evening. It's Andy doing the design in the evening because he's got a job in the daytime. This is, we are a small business. I know that other magazines, many of them are just the same. We are small. And when we go into, so in the UK, when we go into WH Smith's, we have to pay WH Smith's thousands of pounds upfront to stock our magazines in the stores. And it's the same, with Barnes and Nobles. We have to pay the distributor and we get a fraction, we get a fraction of the cover price. And that's why for small businesses and magazines like us, subscribers are our lifeblood. And, I'm completely unrepentant in the fact that I'm always on about subscribing. If you want to support the magazine, please subscribe. And, we have subscription copies sent out from the US, certainly for Modelcraft. It really helps us because actually that is the kind of the cash in the bank that helps us, to grow the titles, to meet the print bills every month. Print went up astronomically over the last 2 years. I mean, we saw our print bill rise by 50-60%. And part of that was just the whole kind of inflationary pressures of energy and things. But the other thing that really affected us was that there was I don't know if you noticed, but there was a paper strike in Finland. So most of our paper in the UK comes from these Finnish paper mills, and they went on strike. So the cost of paper just went crazy. So those costs have come down now. So it's a little bit, it's a little bit easier. But certainly a year ago, 18 months, just coming out of the pandemic was a real struggle for many small print businesses. And you'll see a lot of model companies or paint companies and publishers who publish. You'll have seen their actual publishing outputs contract over the last couple of years. And a lot of that is just simply due to the margins, which were quite tight anyway, being squeezed even further by increasing costs.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. Thanks for sharing that. Along these lines, you talk about print. The magazine is also available digital form as well, from Pocket Mags and potentially other avenues.
Yeah, Pocket Mags is our sort of preferred supplier, as they say. I think. Yeah, I mean we've seen them just 3 or 4 years ago. We were talking double digits in the number of digital magazines we sold each month. It was a tiny proportion of our business. And actually, what we've seen over the last couple of years is a lot of the growth. We've had our print. The print magazine is still growing, but the digital sales and the digital magazine is really growing. It has grown exponentially. Now, that's really interesting, but of course, digital subscriptions are much cheaper than print subscriptions. And again, because we're doing it for a third party, we get a fraction of that cost. But it's really interesting to know that the people are loving the magazine. People are loving the content, all the work we've done. We've done a huge amount of work. And again, this isn't me. This is my contributors and just friends and subscribers and people who love the magazine sharing the content. So I think, 5 years ago, many people had not heard of Military Modelcraft International still. I think now most people have, and that's because of all the, just all the great work that our friends and the contributors have done. And a lot of those people who are new to the magazine, I think you're right, are consuming it, are reading it in digital format. I think that's true, particularly with fantasy, because those guys are it's really interesting, isn't it? Military modelers tend to be of a certain age, it's probably fair to say, certainly in the UK, whereas that fantasy sci-fi figure painting crowd is a little younger. I'm interested to know really from you guys, what's the typical demographic of a military modeler in the US at the moment? How old is your military modelcraft reader in the US, do you think?
I'm almost 40, and I would say I'm usually one of the youngest people in a given room of modelers, military modelers in the United States. Now, if I go to, because I'm also a gamer, I play 40K and other historical games. If I go to my game store, I'm right in the middle of the pack, really. I mean, there's definitely younger people, but also because, those games are expensive. Yeah. I mean, there's no denying that typically a lot of the core people that I see on that side of it are about my age because they're older, they have disposable income, or they're relatively young. It's usually the one of the two. Now, if they're playing like a historical game, if they're playing like an American Civil War game, they're old. That's just the way it is. I don't know if it's like that in the UK, but definitely here, if you're into historicals, small scale historicals, you're pretty much the oldest guy.
Yeah. So I'm 51, and I am, I think, probably very much on the younger scale at most UK model shows at 51. I too, I'm a gamer too. I play 40K, and I do actually play some historical war games. I'm interested in historical gaming at the moment. That's what I've got on the bench at the moment, painting some 28mm historical figures. And I'm one of the youngest ones in that crowd at 52, 51 as well. So yeah, I think it's totally different. If you when we go to the Moson show in Hungary, or we go to, less so SMC, but certainly the Moson show in Hungary, you get the feeling that the guys who are making the military models are in their 30s and 40s. And it's a totally, and then you look at the guys doing the fantasy figure painting, and they're guys in their 20s, and the quality of work is just absolutely extraordinary. And it's because I guess those guys have come to the hobby, many of them have come to the hobby maybe through the Instagram generation, if you like, and their frame of reference, if you like, is the models they see on Instagram. If you are of an older generation, and gosh, I mean, I'm kind of like, I at 51, I'm kind of finding it increasingly difficult to change the way I do things. And I think if you've been enjoying your hobby the way you're enjoying it for 30, 40 years, you may not want to change, and that's absolutely fine. I think it's, I think the great thing about the hobby and the great thing about magazines is that you it caters for everybody. There's no right or wrong way of doing things. I mean, when I started started editing the magazine, I used to get a little bit frustrated because I would look on sort of, model competition tables or club shows, and I think, gosh, should these people not read the magazine because they haven't done a wash like our articles tell them to, or they've never heard of color modulation or all these sorts of things. And then you kind of realize, you think, well, you know what? Maybe they just don't want to. They're happy with doing their hobby the way they do it. They love reading the articles and they love admiring other people's approaches to the hobby, and they love admiring other people's work. But actually, you know what? It gives them a lot of pleasure, and they are happy doing what they do. And I think that I think is something which I have really come to appreciate, in the last few years, just how broad the hobby is, and how hopefully how inclusive it is for different styles and different approaches. And just, it is, I always struggle in a way when people say, I had such fun doing this, because I don't know about you, but I get really frustrated in modeling. Sometimes I get so pissed off with things where they're not going right. And I think, gosh, why am I doing this? This really isn't fun. But it's a hobby, isn't it? And that's it. I'm sure if you play golf, you must come off the golf course really pissed off with how your round went. But, you're still back there the next day doing it again, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, the analogy, a bad day on the golf course is better than a good day at work. I think it's the same for scale modeling. A bad day at the bench is still better than a good day at work. And that's at least the approach I take. David, I'd echo TJ in terms of demographics. When I think about old versus young, even backgrounds as well, I think there's certain backgrounds, whether it's technically inclined, more liberal arts, each genre of modeling attracts those different types of people. And literally carbon copy TJ's story with what I experience in Colorado. There's a gaming store right outside my neighborhood. They have a build night every Friday. When I go in there, I've built a couple times with a neighbor, and the demographic there is younger modelers. And when I say younger, it's probably mid 20s to low 40s for that matter, and that's a younger modeler in my mind. And they're typically building Star Wars Legions, Warhammer 40K, other types of gaming oriented modeling subjects. And then on the flip side, I go to local IPMS clubs, and it's the polar opposite, where I look at the age demographic, and it's upwards of probably the average age is 60 or above in the room.
Yeah.
And I'm practically a newborn when, looking at that. And like you said, there's no wrong way, different demographics, different groups of people enjoy the hobby differently. And I'll be honest, it's a struggle. I work with IPMS USA, and one of the struggles is how do you bring them together? How do you find the common ground? Because the hobby is common, whether you're building a Warhammer Space Marine to an exact replica of the USS Arizona on December 6, 1941, at the core of everything, you're putting pieces of plastic or material together to convey a subject and scale. I'm hopeful that as those different genres collide, I could say, at a show, I'm hopeful that, there's crossover. And I think we see that with, as mentioned, TJ goes from fantasy to military to wargaming. You're of the same flavor, and I'm starting to explore fantasy more. I think it's only a matter of time. And I think, as you mentioned, the internet's helping that. The world of Instagram, Facebook, it's exposing people to different subjects that they're traditionally not exposed to. And it's inspiring. I mean, I've bought many kits off the internet, from the pictures from your mag, from other contributors. Like, that inspires me to open up my mind outside of a 35th scaled armored vehicle.
Yeah. Well, we had a wonderful example of that in the last fantasy, where Stan Spooner did that wonderful Goliath, which is a Goliath Warhammer 40K Genestealer cult vehicle, which he basically put a breeder on the back, and it was kind of a long-range desert group themed kind of post-apocalyptic Dune buggy kind of thing. And actually, however you look at that, whether you look at that from a military perspective or whether you look at it from a gaming perspective, it was just a damn good piece of modeling, and a really fun piece of modeling. I talked about, modeling being fun, but again, when Stan was telling that story, you got a real feeling that he enjoyed that. This was a break from the military stuff, which he does so well. Just something fun, and that made a really nice 4-page article. And I know that 40K people will love that article, and I know that military modelers will think, yeah, that's really cool. That's a great finish. The other thing we haven't touched on, actually, which is something which we were talking about at the model show last weekend, actually, was how we include juniors, kids in the hobby. The other side of that, of course, is does it matter? Do we need to include kids in the hobby? Because some hobbies, I think, some some hobbies you come to at different stages in your life. I mean, I was a modeler when I was a boy, but that's because my dad was a modeler. And I think now, I mean, I play Warhammer with my son, and Chris Meddings does the same. I know Glenn Phelan does the same. And I think these kids will come back to modeling when the time is right for them in their lives. I don't think we need to worry too much about the fact that we've only got 2 entries on the junior side of the competition. Do you know what I mean? I think I think we just need to realize the hobby changes and morphs. When I started off the interview talking a little bit about how I got into my kind of model making sort of journey, if you like, and I go back to that interview with the job interview I had at Games Workshop back in 1992 with Rick Priestley. And Rick Priestley said to me, I want Games Workshop. And of course, Games Workshop is a plastic model producer. That's what it is first and foremost. The games are just something to support the core business, which is making plastic models. And that's how they make their money. But he said to me, I want Games Workshop's models to be as ubiquitous and as well known as Airfix. And I think, 30 years later, they are, aren't they? Everybody knows Warhammer. The kid, I mean, my daughter's in the Scouts, and the Scouts in the UK, you can get a Warhammer badge. You can go camping, you can go and do your knots, and you can do everything, all those kind of traditional scouting things. But you can actually have 2 nights in the Warhammer shop, building and painting Warhammer, and you get a Warhammer badge. And actually, the last couple of weeks, last night, I was there doing a model making badge with them, and we were building some Airfix kits. And they were really interested in it. I don't think any of them are going to go out and buy a model as a result of it, but I think they will have enjoyed that and remembered that. And model making and models are, I think, they are part of people's lives and young people's lives. And I think, I'm sure when they are in their 30s and 40s and they've got children and they've got a bit of disposable income and they want something to do in the evening, I'm sure many of them will come back to the hobby.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, because, you see it, people talk about it on the internet all the time, like, there's only 5 entries on the junior table. Kids don't want to do this hobby. The hobby is dying because of that. I did it when I was a kid. And I think it's important, and we should help kids that want to make models by not talking down to them, B, helping them any way we can as grown modelers and experienced modelers. But we also, it's like a side story. I have 2 daughters. They both have built models. They're not modelers. And my younger one last year, she built a Toon Tank that lots of older modelers will look down on, but she enjoyed it. She took it to our local show and she won Best Junior. And the look on her face, I've won plenty of awards in modeling. I would throw all those away just to see her win another one of those, because it made her day. It made her probably month. And she proudly displays that little medal up in her room. But I think older modelers need to realize that young kids aren't the sign of health in this hobby. It's great when they do it, but I came into modeling as an adult. I never modeled when I was a kid. 29 years old when I built my first model, all because I saw them on the internet. I'm like, that looks really fun. And we can do that through magazines. And I've done it because I've talked to people that I work with that don't know I build models. I'm like, oh yeah, I build models. They have magazines about this. And I showed them a magazine and they're like, wow, this is really cool. You can do this? I was like, yeah, anyone can do this. This is not something special. You can do this too.
Well, we had a lot of that during the pandemic, certainly in the UK. I don't know whether you guys in the States did, but people taking up all sorts of crafts, model making, various crafting things. They had time on their hands, they had some money on their hands, and okay, what can I do? We saw that with we saw a big spike in our sales. It was difficult sometimes for people to get hold of the magazine, but we saw a spike in our sales and in our digital sales during the pandemic. And I know that certainly the big UK retailers like Wonderland Models or Jadlam or Hannants, all of them have seen really good business. And that's not because, loads of kids are buying them or because people like us are buying twice as many kits as we used to. It's actually because new people are coming into the hobby and discovering modeling, as you say, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, however old. And that, that's a great thing. And I think now, there are, with the magazines, with social media, with just the number of and range of kits out there and the accessibility of it. I mean, you can walk into a Warhammer store and you can sit down and build a model in there. These sorts of things just weren't there when we were kids. It was watching Dad on the kitchen table, wasn't it? And that was the closest we got to seeing somebody make a model or seeing models.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what we've talked about concerning concerning junior entries at shows. I think my first Nats was in 1994, the IPMS Nationals. I went in 2001 and 2002, and I don't think I've ever said this on the pod, but I took best junior there, but I beat like 20 people. So it's like not that big of an accomplishment, but the same narrative that is today around the lack of juniors entering at shows has existed for a very long time, as we've just discussed. And I don't think that is a gauge of the health of the hobby. I prescribe to the notion that the most important people are coming out of their undergraduate or uni years and getting them engaged when they have disposable income, a little bit of time before they've maybe started a family or they have a new family, and they spend a lot of time at home and they need something to occupy their time. I think that's the most important demographic, and that demographic's in the sci-fi world, in the Gundam world. That's where you'll find it. And I'm hopeful that there are transitions and crossovers, as you mentioned. Examples like Stan Spooner's work is a perfect example. But I agree, encourage where we can, don't force. And I think that's the biggest thing too, is don't force it. I went to a lot of shows when I was young, and I went in and out, and then I really jumped back in my mid 20s. So I think that's really important. And literally exactly just echoing TJ's sentiments about, his daughter and what type of events they go to, but also the experiences they have, and then the pride they have too in winning. I think that's really important too, is to really highlight that. We talk about award shows being long and laborious. I think taking the time to recognize the juniors is the most important thing. And then the adults can literally take their things and go home, because, I find that we spend too much time in that sometimes. But no, it's a really interesting conversation.
I think, we have our London Plastic Modelers show that Guidelines runs in London in December. You have another one in March. And the last two times, there's been a group of, shall I say, young people. I don't know how old they are. I imagine they're in their early 20s, probably. Couples. And there'd be, 4 guys and 3 girls. And they've come in and they've entered all sorts of models, from armor to sci-fi to figures. And you think, gosh, how are these guys? This is a group of people in their early 20s, boys and girls who just love the hobby and build all sorts of things. And it was, the first time I was like, wow, have you come to the wrong place, guys? But no, they hadn't. They brought their models on, and they were good modelers, and they were really pleased to enter the competition and come and see other people's models. And it was, so I think like you too, I think I'm very optimistic about the future of the hobby. And I think, those narratives around, oh gosh, the hobby's dying. I mean, it really, really isn't. It's stronger now than it ever has done. And the magazines, the podcasts, I mean, who knew modeling podcasts were a thing? And, here we are with thousands of people, listening and enjoying the content.
Yeah, it's really wild. And I think part of the help in that growth of the hobby too is technology. And it's not only from the aspects of social media and engagement, but I think a constant fixture in a lot of hobby conversations is 3D printing and the prevalence of it and the growth of it. I mean, I just got in the mail today some 3D prints that I'm astounded by. And I love seeing it being more and more in articles too, because it's just a powerful tool that we have today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, just getting back to TJ was saying about this sort of 28 millimeter historical figures. I mean, I signed up to a Kickstarter for one recently, and the quality of this stuff is amazing. And actually, the internet has made it possible for those 100 guys all over the world who wanted that particular thing to get together to put some money in the pot, and there it is. I mean, it is quite extraordinary. When I started the magazine, who never mind podcasts, who knew 3D printing was a thing, and there we are, and who knows what there will be in, when we get together and chat about this in 10 years' time.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking about that, as we wrap up this interview, we've kind of hinted at it, but I'd love to have your perspective on, what's your outlook for the hobby? You fast forward 5-10 years, what do you think it's going to be like?
I mean, I think about this quite a lot, and I think about this particularly when I go back and I look at the issues of the magazines that we did 6, 7, 8 years ago. And that's really interesting, because actually the quality of the models hasn't really changed. I think they are as well painted and as well finished and as well presented then as they were now, and sometimes better. What you don't have 8 or 10 years ago is just that you could not produce an issue of Modelcraft like we produce today with, a 1/72nd scale 3D printed 1920s armored car, or you have a reference feature where you're actually just walking around a battlefield that's actually in play at the moment. and taking photographs, or you're taking, so it's the immediacy of it is one thing, and I guess that will become more apparent. But just the scope and the range and quality. I mean, I saw some 3D prints. I can't remember who they were by, but somebody had done a 3D print of a Matilda 1 that was shared on Facebook. And I was looking at that and I said, that is absolutely extraordinary. Who would have thought 2 years ago that you would have that kind of model? And as you say, you can order it. I could order something today and it will be here from halfway across the world in a week's time. And I guess that kind of immediacy and that kind of interconnectedness of all sorts of aspects of the hobby will just become more. So I'm sure we'll get more crossovers. I'm sure we'll get much more interest in people who are doing tanks and also doing Gundam. Lots of people who are really beginning to get interested in figures and looking at tutorials on how to paint figures, and you'll maybe see lots more figures on tanks. Maybe the hobby won't be quite as siloed as it is now. I don't know. I don't think the quality of finished models will be any better in 10 years' time than it is now, just as I don't think it was much worse 10 years ago. So I think, unless somebody comes up with radically new ways of painting and finishing models, but I think interconnectedness and just the scope of what you can do will increase.
No, that's a fantastic answer. And I share a lot of your sentiments. It's really interesting to comment about the evolution of modeling in the last 10 years from a personal perspective. Like, I think you're right. You could probably pull a magazine off the shelf from 10 years ago, even some, AFE modelers from 20, and those models still hold up today. And I think the evolution really is in the technology of creating the model itself, in terms of the manufacturing and even distribution channels, whether it's digital, like you can buy a file and print it home, or, as you mentioned, buy something. I got, just as I mentioned, 2 kits in today from China, bought a couple weeks ago, and here they are. So it's really astounding.
I mean, I still remember reading military modeling and writing a letter to Rye Gareth, which was a model shop, which UK readers or listeners will probably remember. There was somewhere in Scotland, and writing a letter to them, putting a check in or a postal order, sending it off, and hopefully 28 days later something would. But again, I remember that sense of excitement with doing that. Whether that sense of excitement ebbs a little bit when everything is so immediate and we have so much, I don't know. Perhaps it does for some, perhaps it doesn't. But certainly very fond childhood memories of looking at the adverts in printed magazines and then writing a letter.
It's funny you mentioned that. I gotta share a story. In the United States, we had they came back as Squadron. It's a hobby shop retailer, but back in the 90s when I was a kid, that was exactly the same type of story you just mentioned. The mailer comes in once a month. It's black and white. It has the box arts and the descriptions of the kits, and in the back there's a little tear piece of paper where you fill out your quantity and list the kit you want, and then you make checks payable to Squadron MMD. You put it in the mail, and as you mentioned, like, you hope something shows up 30 days from now, and there's no visibility in where you're at in the payment process to fulfillment to delivery, and then today it's all instantaneous. But it's so funny that you mentioned that, because I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to that, at least on the American side as well.
Yeah.
Well, David, thank you so much for stopping by. As we wrap up, I just want to highlight your magazine again: Military Modelcraft International, and then also Fantasy Figures International. And for our listeners, where can they find those magazines?
Okay, so you can find those magazines on the newsstands, certainly in the UK, and in Barnes & Noble stores in the US and Canada. Our website, we have 2 websites. One is www.guidelinepublications.co.uk. So that's the publisher, Guideline Publications. So we also have a US website, where you can take payment where we take payment in dollars. But if you just Google search Guideline Publications, and you'll see the whole range of our hobby titles. We have cars, we have trucks, we have some railway magazines, and we also have Scale Aircraft Modeling. Scale Aircraft Modeling is the #1 aviation modeling title, certainly in English, to go with Military Modelcraft International, which is the #1 selling English language military magazine. So we're really proud of our titles and our books, war paint books. Again, so Guideline Publications is the place to look for our titles.
Awesome. Well, David, thank you so much for stopping by. We look forward to sharing this with our listeners, and hopefully we'll be in touch and see you again on the pod.
Yeah, really fun, guys. Yeah, really appreciate that. Thanks, John. Thanks, TJ.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys.
Well, that was certainly an awesome interview with David. Really looking forward to meeting him this fall at Scale Model Challenge. So, all right, now we're just going to take a brief moment to recap the shows that we've talked about already. Some of us have gone, and we want to share a little bit more about them and what we loved and what we look forward to next time. Take it away, TJ.
Thanks, JB. Like I mentioned earlier, yeah, I've also been to 2 shows within 2 weeks. The first of which I had the opportunity to go travel down to Atlanta, from the invite of friend of the Posse, Mark Sprayberry, one of the co-owners of Sabo Miniatures, invited me down to the Atlanta Military Figure Society annual show that they host in the Atlanta region. They partner up with the local AMPS chapter down there, and they put on kind of a dual show. So it's both figures and armor. I mean, it's 2 of my favorite things. So I got to travel. I've never been to Atlanta, so I got to go down to Atlanta, and I entered the show. It's an open judging, I guess the Chicago style of judging, as they call it. What did Chip Payne call it? A juried exposition, I think is how he described it. So yeah, I got to put my work on display next to Jim Rice, which was intimidating, because if you know figure painting, you know that Jim is probably one of the best American figure painters. Seeing his work in person was amazing. And I also attended a seminar that he hosted about painting source lighting. I wouldn't necessarily say object source lighting, because it's more just general lighting directions, and even a little bit of cast shadow work that he did. And I think probably the best part is I got to assist with judging the historical painters. I was put on the judging team, and as a first timer, I wasn't officially a judge, but I did all the things that all the judges did. I had my own sheet. I walked with the judges. I helped. They included me in all the conversations. My input was valid. It's just my actual vote when it came to decide what medal got what. Even though I filled out a sheet, mine was just completely discarded. How they do it is each judge chooses what they would like to award it. It's written down on a piece of paper. Those papers are collected right at the end of judging, and the lowest one is thrown out, and they average them. That's essentially what they do. Similar to AMP style, where they average everything. That tells you what you get. So that's the only part I didn't have. I did all that, but that was just not taken into account. But yeah, I got to my judging team was all Atlanta masters, all very, very talented painters in their own right. Rod Curtis was the lead. Anyone that paints figures probably knows who Rod is. He's a Napoleonics guy, and yeah, it was awesome. It really was. I really enjoyed the show. I'm going to go next year. It was fun. I did well. I got 2 golds and a silver. I can't complain. I was very happy. Yeah, it was great. Anyone that hasn't been to a figure show should go to one, even if you don't paint figures, just to see the other side. I know there's a lot of discussion about open judging and 1, 2, 3 judging, and there's a lot of hardened opinions on both sides. But I really feel like you should see the other side if you haven't, because it's probably not what you think it is. Going with that, this is the second show that I've been to like this. It has cemented my feelings that open judging, gold, silver, bronze, is superior just in every way. To me, it's not even a discussion. I'm one of those people too. You cannot change my mind, but I came to that opinion from participating in the system, seeing it in action, and seeing what you do at a show like this. They reward the painter's effort. Everyone gets awarded for their effort. Now, not everyone gets gold. There's not a whole lot of golds, but yeah, it was awesome. The week after that, I drove down to Richmond with our friend Jackson for the Old Dominion Open. It's as the geeks call it, it's the kickoff to show season here in Region 2. I think it's the first Region 2 show. Good show, big show. I don't remember the numbers. I think they had close to 500 models on the table, which is pretty dang good. I think it's the biggest one they've had. They might have had more. Yeah, great show, decent vendors. I did buy some stuff. Yeah. It was fun. Got to see Jackson win some awards. He's bested me yet again. And I think in every category we went head to head, he placed and I did not, which was pretty cool. Yeah.
It's that saying from Darth Vader. Now you are the master.
You know what? They just don't like my armor.
IPMS and TJ Armor, they do not. They do not get along.
That show does not like my armor. I don't know what it is. I think I won one or two. I took home 7 awards of that show. I diversified. I don't believe in IPMS judging, but I will take advantage of IPMS judging given the chance. I'm not that's the way they set it up. Why am I not going to take advantage of it? I will enter as many things as I can over varied categories because that's the way they do it. Most of my 7 awards were in science fiction or figures. I think I got 1 or 2 in armor, and I brought a fair amount of armor. Oh, my artillery piece won 1, and then I don't even remember what the other one was. Yeah, I don't remember, but I was like, okay, cool, yeah. But Jackson did well. I was very pleased. I think he was pleased too. And of course, the geeks cleaned up in the aircraft categories like they always do.
Whitey's F-35 is amazing.
Yes, it is. He actually displayed it on a mirror, which Whitey typically does not do. But if you've seen that kit, the bays are just, oh God, they're gorgeous. And his particular take on it was really, really good. And of course, Nemo had some work there. I think he had the flanker out of some Russian thing. Exquisite, of course. Darren had some good work on the table too. I don't remember exactly what Darren brought. He might have brought the Super Takano. I don't know if he's finished that. Yeah, and then Frill won some awards too. So yeah, they like to give me a hard time about going up there to get awards, but that's only because they do all the categories I'm in before they do the aircraft. As soon as aircraft goes, it's just a constant rotation of the 4 of them going up to go collect awards. Right. And so I'm like, just back off, buddy. Like, you're just as bad about this as I am. Nice try.
And I bet the person giving out the awards is scared every time Frill comes up. Oh God, my hand's going to get broken again.
Yeah, that's no doubt. Oh crap, it's him again.
It's him again. I'm not going to be able to build for 2 months now.
He hands the trophy to Bill. You give it to him.
And real quick, one other thing I want to highlight about the ODO show, the Gundam builders came out in force at that show. Now, look, I've made no secret that I'm not a fan of Gundam. They all look the same to me. Sorry. But I respect the fact that people are into it and damn good builders build Gundam. I can't take, just because I don't like it doesn't mean that it's not a real thing. There was some good work on that Gundam table. It was hard to see because it was crowded pretty much the entire show. It was hard to get near it. Another thing, I think I told you guys this, someone came up to me almost all the time to be like, hey, I like the podcast. Hey, blah, blah, blah. I got recognized way more than I ever have. And it was a little strange because that doesn't really happen to me very often, but it was also kind of cool to the point where even Jackson was like, dude, I turned around to try to talk to you, but like another guy was talking to you after the third guy that I was over there talking to. And also, interestingly enough, a handful of the guys I met were also construction workers like me, which was pretty cool because it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of us. They were electricians, two different guys, Andrew, and then I feel bad because I forgot your name. I'm so sorry. Message me because I don't remember it now. I feel like an idiot. But yeah, it was really cool.
Man, those shows sound like they were a great time, and I know you always have a good time out with your son when you go to those shows. Grant, we talked about it a little bit, but you also went to that show in California where you got to hang out with JC for a bit.
I forgot to mention someone. I also got a chance to talk to Ricky Hoskin. I think it's Hoskin, a buddy of mine from Instagram. He lives in the Richmond area. Super nice guy, really talented Gundam builder. He's also venturing into machining career, which is awesome. And his son won Best Junior, which was even cooler. So that was pretty neat to see. So thanks for talking to me, Ricky. You're awesome. And yeah, that's sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I didn't want to forget that.
That's all good. Anyway, Grant, yeah, you talked a little bit about that. I don't know if you had anything else, but I think you looked like you had a really good time.
Yeah, it was a fun time. Like I said, that show is pretty small. Like I said, a few hundred on the most. A lot of car models, a lot of really, really. Southern California has a really, really big car model groups here, and they're, hands down, some of the best stuff you'll ever see. Paint jobs that you look like you can put your hand through. There's a real good friend of mine who's in some of the local club, Pablo. Yeah, he's out here. He is a model builder or car builder, but he does more distressed old cars with rust and stuff like that. Fantastic builder. Great guy. Him and his sons. He's got a son in college now. and his youngest son just turned 16 today. So, happy birthday. But, he's a very good modeler. Talked about Danny's F-14. I posted a few pictures of that F-14. There's a close-up of the cockpit. You can actually read the pilot's name and their call signs. The seatbelts. That kid is phenomenal. The interior is from Edward. He shaved everything out of that and put the Edward kit in there. It's really beautiful. His P-38 is probably it's the best P-38 I've seen. The markings.
Wow, that's saying something. Yeah.
It's a beautiful P-38. It really is. He's an Air Force guy. Served a couple tours. He knows what he's talking about. He will weather an aircraft the way it should be weathered. His tones on his aircraft are spot on. I did learn a little bit from him about Japanese aircraft, which I'll pass along. Naval aircraft did not chip much or have too much camouflage on them, but the Army aircraft that were on islands had a lot of chipping and a homemade camouflage. Never thought about it that way, which surprised me that I didn't think about it that way, but it's pretty interesting insight into that. And then Mike Armstrong, another friend of mine, lives up the road here from me, another great armor builder. Like I said, he's been doing this for a long time. He does mostly dioramas and figures. So he definitely was a positive for that show. And it was a good show, small, like I said. But I do want to plug September. I don't know the exact date, but there is a new IPMS group out here in the Ventura, Thousand Oaks area. They will be putting on their first show. They've been a group now for 2 years. I talked to Joe Porcher about this online. Joe Porcher will be coming down. It's their first show, like I said. So if you're in the area, once I get a flyer, I'll post it in the Southern California guys. But if you can be in the area in September, definitely hit that show. It'll be fun.
Lastly, we'll talk about the Northwest Scale Modelers Model Mania show. We've got the head honcho here, but before we let him step up, I just want to kind of, again, take my hat off to Jim. He's a humble guy, and he's not going to want to hear this. Jim took the mantles of leadership from Tim Nelson, who had really done a great job with that show, and he took some chances. He brought in a lot more seminars. He really embraced the Gundam community through our buddy Joshua Scott, brought in a really impressive display of Gundams. Well over 100 Gunpla kits were on display. And I noticed on the stream of people that were coming into the museum that was a really big hit with the younger demographic. But Jim did a really great show. It's a lot of work. Jim was very, very stressed out. But as somebody that, travels and went to the show, I had a great time. I know JB and Grant had a great time. I'll let them speak to that. Jim, just, you deserve praise. The museum was extremely pleased. We had huge crowds, lots and lots of models, and you just did a great job.
Well, thank you. We had 2,400 models on display. It was the second most we'd ever had at the show. There was one year Tim lost his mind and they tried to get over 3,000 models, which they did. We're never doing that again. There were, I think Josh told me there were 117 Gundams. We had 99 modelers displaying, which was also a record. And we had 6,000 people through the door at the museum over the 2 days, which was also a record for the show. So I kind of look at this is Northwest Scale Modelers outreach. Let's kind of, there's two major goals with this. One is get people to visit the museum, because I think there's a lot of people in Seattle don't even know the Museum of Flight exists. And two is just be a positive ambassador for the hobby. We had everything on display. We had everything from Bill Huffman's amazing woodwork to we had a gentleman who he had an X-Wing and a Saturn V and I forget what they call the things here, the race boats in town made out of matchsticks. We had all the Gundams. Josh did a great job with the World of Gundam. I will not take credit for the seminars. That was Will Perry who did that. And I think they went well. We did try something a little different. We put some under the tail of the Blackbird. And one thing I learned is the Blackbird is a Blackbird. As it gets gray in the afternoon, it's hard to see. So we're going to have to do some lights in the future. And really, I just want to promote modeling and get people excited about modeling and get, I've always felt that, there's about, 4,500 people in IPMS, and I don't know what the AMS numbers are, but there's a lot more modelers out there. And let's just get people exhibiting exhibiting, and we had no vendors. It was a display only show. We had 2 awards. We had the Curator's Choice that Matthew Barchette picked, which went to the gentleman who made the items out of coffee sticks and matchsticks and skewers. And then we had lost one of our modelers this year, Terry Moore. He was a huge V17 fan. So we now have a Best V17 award. And the best thing about it was Terry's family brought some B-17s, and he won the best B-17 for the year. So we're going to do it again next year, President's Day weekend. If anybody would like to take it over, please call me. You said it. I was really stressed out, but you know me well enough. Isn't that pretty much my operation? I'm pretty much stressed out all the time, and I'm going to expand it a little bit. But I think we're getting to the point that we can't make it much bigger because there's only so much room under the Blackbird. But it's just a celebration of modeling and outreach, show off the hobby in the best possible, and make the museum look good is kind of what I want to do. And I could not do it without you guys, without all the modelers. This was not my show; it was everyone's show. And if you're planning, want to come to Seattle next February, we'd love to see you. And if you can bring something to display, that's awesome too. And my question for you guys is, how much of the museum did you get to see this year?
I actually saw pretty much all of it, tell you the truth. I tell you that they had probably one of the best World War I aircraft displays. It's phenomenal. I'm a big World War I aircraft. I love them. I've never built any, but I love the designs and the look of the aircraft. They had display models up there that were all basically scratch built, which in a word, these were models that they had in a single display up there that were the antithesis of string bags. Literally nothing but strings holding 2 pieces of wood together in a seat. And I don't know how they got anybody to fly in those things, but they did. They had, every the spades, the everything, the Fokkers up there, the tri-wings, and they had, what was really cool for me is they showed the engines. They had the engines pulled out, or extra engines out there sitting by the aircraft. And you see the size of those things. And, and you're thinking, this is not very, compared to a modern day engine, it's not impressive. And then also I'd like to call out, if you go across the crosswalk and you go down and you can go outside basically, and there is a 747, there's some jets back there, there's the Boeings, the new Boeing, was it the I can't remember the name, the 787s there's a Concorde, and it's a great walk that you can go in some of the aircraft and you can see inside the aircraft, and that was really neat. That was really a very interesting little thing. It was a little cold, but it was fun. That was a very interesting part. The gentleman that won the Curator's Choice, the matchsticks and the stuff, he built I'd say it's about 4 foot tall Saturn V rocket on a launch pad. Built the launch pad, everything around it. It was one of those things where you just walked by and it stopped you. It literally stopped you, and you had to go back and look at it. It was some beautiful work. He built aircraft, and it was a well-earned award.
Yeah, it was a big hit with the crowd too. There was a lot of people that came that weren't necessarily scale modelers, but I think people were definitely fascinated with his approach. I didn't actually get to see much of the museum, pretty busy, but want to call out Rick Lawler just really quick. He came up to support us and to support Jim, and we did a seminar with Rick, and it was great. Rick actually helped build a couple of the pieces that are in the museum. And, he's obviously fantastic at what he does. So thank you, Rick. It was a lot of fun doing that seminar with you and just spending time. And John, how much of the museum did you get to see? Because I didn't get to see very much this year.
I didn't get to see very much. I did take a moment on Sunday, and I went with Jeremy Elliott, his son, and I think Grant would have maybe went with us. It was all a blur, but I think I want to hit on probably the most important thing is the people that we met. And it started from the moment landing in Seattle. Grant was gracious enough to have a rental car, and we made our way over to Easy Street. And it's like literally getting the band back together, showing up, seeing you there, seeing Josh Buck, Jim Bates, and we're sitting upstairs. And I mean, just that's amazing right there. And then we go over to Skyway and we run into a a person that became one of our closest friends that weekend. Part of the core team, we'll call it, Chris Lovewell. We fortuitously bumped into him at Skyway, and he and his wife, Rayoni, became our best friends over the weekend. And I think that's the most important thing, is the friendships that we made and the wonderful people. We've already talked about John Gray from a modeling standpoint, but from just a great person standpoint, he was another one. Jeremy Elliott and his son, Eric Brubaker and his son, which I'll have to call out. His son's a narc. We're at the Airbnb and there's 20 of us, and we're docile. We're modelers. We have Costco pizza and Diet Cokes. There's not much booze being slung. And his son is quietly standing there when I'm talking to John Vitkus, and I'm like, I know he's got something to say. So I'm like, what's up, man? He's like, there's no parties allowed here. I said, well, where'd you see that? He's like, it says on the sign over there when you check in. Didn't you read it? Well, sir, you are absolutely correct. Sure enough, I went over and looked at the sign, but no, he was a great kid and just a great time.
You also forgot we had Daniel and Hank Knopfel as well.
That's right. That's right.
It's always good to see them.
And Carrie supported the show too.
Yep. And Carrie was there.
Yeah. Dan and Hank came over, which was awesome. And, I'll call out, I think Hank's T6 is amazing. When I saw it on the table, I was like, dang, man, this looks great. Needs to be entered in the adult category, for crying out loud.
Well, and how many kids at his high school can say, I had a model in a museum? Hank
That's
can
right.
say that now. He had his, the reason the T6 was here is I asked his dad to bring it up, and it was in one of the Northwest Scale Modeler display cases for a while when we had a T6 display. But to me, I probably sound like a broken record, but shows are cool, but really it's about the people you meet. Like, looking at models is fun, buying models is fun, but really it's the hang after the show that was the best part. And when you get to do that in a house with a koi pond, it's even better, eh? Even if we do have an 8 or 10-year-old narc. He'll figure it out as he gets older.
John Everett was there with us.
Yeah, John Everett, yep.
We had Josh as well, John Vitkus, and the Divine, the Secret Society showed up. I'm working my way in.
David Geldmacher and John Robinson from Ohio. That was great to see them. It's just, it feels like the show is an excuse to have a big social gathering, which is what I love.
Seriously.
And we're doing it again at Commies, so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And one of the things I'll call out, both in the World War I and the World War II area, is there's a collection of models there built by one man on the back walls. And, they're not contest winners, but one guy built all these models, and it's just kind of cool to see them. I think the museum does a great job. They work models into a lot of things. They've even got a couple of mine there somewhere, but that's because I slipped them a 50. It's amazing to have an opportunity to work closely with the museum, and they're great to work with. And we are so blessed to be able to put on this show because, well, here's how I'll say it. We already talked about Heritage Con. It's hard to beat a model show with a Lancaster in the hangar, and I think the only way you can do it is a Blackbird in the hangar. So those are the two greatest venues in scale modeling, and the only way to differentiate them is we're a 2-day show. Heritage Con is a 1-day show. So they're the best 1-day show at an aviation museum. We're the best 2-day show.
And the display case that your club does in conjunction with the museum, that's a really attractive display, and that had a lot of interest with people coming through the show. And it's unique to have a model show in the museum. And Too Tall Nelson, he experienced that firsthand. So I'm sitting there talking to him on Saturday, and I'm looking at all of his models, and I noticed that one of his models, it's a beautiful 1/72nd scale natural metal aircraft, and I noticed there's a great big blob of oil on it, and I just kind of tilted my head back and looked straight up, and that model was underneath the landing gear of a DC-3 that was suspended from the ceiling, and that landing gear had dripped that oil onto his model. Don't worry, it was fine. He got it all cleaned off and everything, but really kind of a unique aspect of having a model show, in that kind of a venue.
Yeah, he said that DC-3 had been up there 10 years.
Oh, it's got to be longer than that. I bet it's been up there since the 90s would be my guess. And the other thing I will say, and JB brought this up earlier, and not trying to be a honk for my town, but I am. This place is beautiful. We got water, we got mountains. Well, we do have too much traffic. We have de Havilland beavers flying over all the time. It's a great place to be. There's a lot of history here, and maybe someday we'll be able to go visit the other amazing museum in town if it ever reopens.
Absolutely. When that reopens, that's just going to make the attraction that much better. And another shout out for Easy Street, one of the great record shops in the country. And, man, makes the trip worth it to be able to go to places like that.
Since we're talking about Easy Street, it's one of the few places you can go to a record store that both Pearl Jam, Government Mule, Mudhoney all played at. But it's a record store and a cafe with some pretty decent food. And it was great because it really felt like we were getting the band back together. They put us upstairs next to one of the record rooms, and we're just all sitting there, and they were great to us.
Yeah, free stickers for everybody.
Yeah, stickers, and I spent way too much on vinyl, and I hear Scott and Utah Josh spent way too much on CDs, so it was great. And the rest of the guys just put up with our music geekdom.
No, before we move on, I do want to note there were a couple folks that we ran into that we've known and love, and some newer faces. So Scott, you briefly mentioned Doug Reed. Him and a bunch of folks from the Oregon Mid-Valley Modelers and IPMS Salem showed up and brought a huge contingent of their modelers and models. And they had a really nice section over towards the, I guess you could say, the mezzanine look down. And they had a lot of fantastic work. Doug has been a supporter of the pod forever, since day one, I think, and loved seeing him again and seeing everything that his team brought. Absolutely fantastic support of the show. And then, obviously Bill Huffman, who we've mentioned, and then we've met a few new people, and Will Jordinger was one of them as well, who attended seminars and was super nice, and it was just really great to see and meet everyone.
Yeah, and let's not forget Joe Porcher, who I think has made it a mission to support every model contest and event that he can, at least in the Western U.S. I mean,
if it's west of the Mississippi, he's going.
Yeah,
it's something to me that he's going out to one of the Geeks shows.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's going to out to their show, and that's
he'll be at Tommy's.
He'll be at Tommy's.
Yeah, Joe just does so much for the hobby, and he works really, really hard. I mean, I think he single-handedly keeps the IPMS and the Amps Club in Nevada going. But like I said, he's a big supporter. He was there, and it's all about the people.
And I've got to also throw the thank you out to Rick Lawler. I really appreciated him coming up and putting on a demo. I unfortunately didn't get to attend, and this is another mistake I made. We had two competing demos. We had Chris Buchholz, who's a modeler and a writer, doing one at the Tuskegee Airmen, and we had Rick doing his oil paint at the same time, and it's hard to be in the same place. The other thing we haven't mentioned, two things. One was Tim Nelson did an amazing Black History Month display that was wonderful. The display was great if you didn't know this. I kind of learned along the way because Tim was like sending me stories, and there were so many stories I'd never heard of. Unfortunately, the Black history person that I built a model of was a gentleman by the name of Al Bundy. He was the first Canadian combat pilot in the RCAF who was African-American. Unfortunately, he shares a name that makes everybody laugh, but it's just a great story. But the other thing that blew me away was Josh had put together a little make and take, and he had got some Gundams, and I don't know what they are, if anybody wanted to know, that are designed to be built without using nippers, and you can snap them off the sprue, and it looks as good as with my God hand. I could not believe that technology, that you can snap these parts off the sprue, and they're clean enough, and he had those for the kids, and they were building some of those. So there's so much thanks to go around to everybody, and if you're in the Pacific Northwest or even in the western part of the country, come see us next year.
Yeah, I'd like to throw out a name real quick too. Rick Taylor. Rick Taylor did some really, really good guy. Does a lot of Vargas 3D printed World War I stuff. Had a big table there, big displays. He was building models the whole time, showing people. An artillery officer. I won't hold that against him, but he's a great guy, really nice guy. And Chris's wife. I can't remember his wife's name. Rayoni. She brought everybody, literally everybody, chocolate covered macadamia nuts. Yes, folks, from the islands, and regular macadamia nuts from the islands. I swear to God, they were great.
Yeah,
a sweetheart from top to bottom. Both of them were great people. Another pilot, by the way, another air pilot for us.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. I mean, obviously we've rambled on and on. What a great time we've all had at shows. If there's a show local to you, if you guys haven't gone to see a show, do it. The people are what make this hobby great. You'll have a good time. At the very least, you'll be inspired by seeing other people's work. And so, get out to a show, find, you can get on, IPMS has a calendar of events. You can get on and look there, or just keep an eye on our Plastic Posse group page, and you'll find certainly a show that's probably in your area. All right. Well, if any of you out there are interested in repping the Posse, you can do that by checking out our merch page. Many of you have already ordered, whether it's a coffee mug or a t-shirt, a jumper, and of course our famous Triple P lounge trousers. You can do that. You can order all of the merch on the web. I'm not going to read the web address. It's in our show notes. You can also see that on our Facebook page. There's a link there that'll take you to it. And we're also open if you have ideas for merch. We've had a few people submit ideas that we've actually turned into merch. And so, let us know. We try to keep the cost very, very low. It's just a fun thing to do. If we see you at a show and you're wearing it, we'll try and slip you some swag. Anyway, JB, why don't you take us home, man?
Yeah, we want to thank everybody again for joining us for episode 65. It's been an absolutely killer beginning of the year. Your online support, your in-person interactions has just made it unbelievable so far, and it's only onward and upward from here. Your support, along with our great sponsors and Posse Outriders, help bring the Triple P to you every 2 weeks. Reminder to send your feedback on the episode to plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com or on social media. We have many avenues there. And if you haven't joined our Plastic Posse group, please do head on over. A lot of great work being shared. We shared and highlighted some of that earlier in the episode. We have almost 4,000 members, and the community continues to grow and be a stronger force for good in the hobby. So with that said, we'll see you in 2 weeks. We love to hear from you. And you know what we always like to say, yeehaw!
If you would like to support the Triple P and become a Plastic Posse Outrider, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Plastic Posse Podcast and set up a recurring donation there. This helps us offset the costs of bringing you the Triple P. There are 3 different tiers of support, starting with just $1 a month. If you would like early access to Posse episodes, and the ability to message us directly, and special content like JB's complete build of the new Tamiya Jagdpanzer 4L70A, aka Brick, give it a try. Let's recognize our amazing deputy marshals. Davis Tennant, the voice of Bob, Jeremy Diamond, Ryan Smith, Terry Wilkinson, Chris Lovewell, Andrew Callis, Ethan Idemill, Bruce Modelneuve, Steve Baker, Eric DeGleesh, Joe Porche, Graham Pearson, Patrick Brown, Steve Schaefer, Jay Kidd, Paul Burdett, Brandon Gentry, Robert Klein, Mark Ewing, Ted Kawahara, Josh Orr, John Bryan, Scale Model Hanger, Toadman, Model Doc, Doug Reed, Greg James, Les Ricala, B Colt 1911, John Everett, Josh Buck, Black Rifle Model Works, Thomas Baniak, Mark Bradley, Zach Pease, Joel Munson, Eric Brubaker, Jeremy Moore, DB Scale Model Studios, Matt Johnson, Jeremy Elliott, Mike Talley, Previous Seat, Mediocre Middle-Aged Modeler, Dan Knoffel, and JC Osborne.
All right, and a shout out to our excellent posse foremen, Eric, Len, John, Cliff, Rick, Eric, Mike, Alex, Benjamin, Craig, Papa Steve, Logan, Red Beach One Studios, MD Models, JV, Pete, Toby, Matters of Scale, Damian, Kieran, Cody, Papa Mike Charlie, Tim, Forrest Ghost 73, Nuke Man Mike, Greg, JAK, MAK Armor, Ash, Irish Pat, Paul, What's the Deal with iBones Models, Mr. Grizz, Jackson, Chris, Lee, Jamie, and Steve.
And of course, our Posse Outriders, including Logan, Steve, and Jared. Also, we're asking all of you for a favor. Please consider posting a review of the Triple P on the podcast platform that you listen to or over on Facebook. Each 5-star review helps other modelers find the Plastic Posse. Also, if you haven't already, remember, join our Plastic Posse group over on Facebook. It's a great place for the community to interact, post build pics, ask questions, or just hang out.